The story begins with Arata, who is your average middle-aged Joe, who spends his time overworking at a Japanese black company. One night, he collapses on his bed after work and opens his eyes in the afterlife, where God tells him that he died from overworking too much. Despite that, he was supposed to live for a few more years, but due to a divine screw-up he ended up here before his time, so to make it up to him, God tells him to make a wish. Arata thinks about it for a moment and says that he wants to live on an island without any humans and wants a strong body that doesn't get injured or sick. The god fulfills his wish and tips him with a skill that lets him copy any magic after seeing it just once, and then sends him off to another world to live his new life. With that, Arata opens his eyes on an island in a 20-year young body and thinks about what just happened. But then stops worrying and resolves to do his best to live a peaceful life, this time, and heads into the forest behind him. While making his way through it, he realizes that his body feels much lighter and he can move way better than he ever could in his previous life. Suddenly, a rabbit jumps out of a bush and gets in front of Arata. Looking at its cute eyes, Arata feels bad for needing to hunt it for dinner, but before he can catch it, the rabbit tackles him like a bull as if it was supposed to do some damage. Seeing that its attack didn't do anything to Arata, the rabbit tries to get away from him, but Arata punches it mid-air while trying to catch it and ends up sending it straight into a tree like a racing gun. Being the goofball he is, Arata wonders why the rabbit jumped and hit its head into the tree, but figures that it must be normal in this world. After that, he bends down to grab the unconscious rabbit, but suddenly a massive wolf appears behind him ready to steal his prey. Arata decides to toss the rabbit as bait and runs away as fast as he can until he sees no one behind. Eventually, he stops by a tree to catch his breath and thinks just how close he came to dying once again and wonders if this is what living alone really means. After that, Arata looks back at the forest and thinks that it's getting dark and decides to look for food and water the next day. With that, he walks back to the rocky shore and calls it a day while appreciating his new body and its stamina. At the same time, he wonders if he will really be able to survive on this island all alone, but then he looks up at the night sky, and the breathtaking scene firms his resolve, and he thinks that he would be fine after all if he can see this view every night. The next morning, he notices how his body didn't feel sore despite sleeping on the rocks, and then decides to explore the beach for some food before going back into the dangerous forest. While walking along the shore, something catches his eye, and he freezes in his place. He takes a careful look and realizes that it's a girl lying unconscious on the beach and starts running towards her, wondering where she came from. Seeing there's no time to waste, he checks if she is still breathing and notices that her breath is fading away slowly. With no other option, Bro decides to give her CPR like in the movies. Clenching his fists, he readies himself to give it a try and apologizes to the girl with a promise that she can yell at him later. He breathes into her mouth and starts giving her chest compressions, and after a few tries, she coughs up some water and starts breathing again. He rolls back onto the sand feeling relieved before noticing that her skin tone is returning to normal. He admires her beautiful face and smiles, but then he realizes that there shouldn't be anyone else on this island. Even so, he can't just leave her like this, so he starts undressing her carefully and tries hard not to look at her. But Bro instantly starts blushing as he notices her red underwear matches her hair, and immediately turns his face away, scolding himself for even looking. Once he manages to get her into dry clothes, he hangs the wet ones on a rope, and after looking at them closely he says that now it really feels like he has stepped right into a fantasy world, because these clothes look like something right out of an RPG. Just then, the girl wakes up and asks Arata who he was. Arata gets close to her and introduces himself before telling her that he found her stranded on the beach, so he saved her life. She nods and tries to sit up, to which Arata shows concern, wondering if she should really be moving. The girl notices her new clothes, which makes Arata flustered, and he quickly explains that her clothes were soaked, so he had to change them. Hearing this, she blushes, and Arata scratches his head awkwardly, muttering that maybe he shouldn't have done that. The girl smiles and thanks Arata for saving her, which surprises him, but he smiles back, relieved that she's okay. She introduces herself as Rihanna Mistoral. Feeling curious, Arata asks why she was lying unconscious on the shore. Rihanna explains that she was assigned to travel to the farthest island under the king's orders, but a massive storm hit them and caused their ship to sink, nearly ending their lives. She then asks if Arata lives on the island, but Arata thinks that he can't tell her the truth and laughs awkwardly, saying that he somehow ended up here as well. Rihanna accepts his answer, since what matters is that he saved her. Arata thanks her, but she says she should be the one thanking him. He suggests taking a break before looking for food and water, and after a while, they head into the forest. Arata checks on her and notices she is tired, so suggests that they should take a break. Feeling exhausted, Rihanna notices how Arata doesn't seem tired and admires his amazing stamina. Arata says that he's surprised too, making her ask how he can be surprised with his own stamina. After that, Rihanna says that this island is weird and based on where her ship sank and how she ended up on this island. It shouldn't be that far off from the kingdom and wonders why the king doesn't know about it. Suddenly, Arata notices a pack of wolves coming towards them, and he realizes that these are the same ones from yesterday. He notices that they're getting ready to attack and quickly tells Rihanna to run, but she smirks and stands there, calling herself the strongest mage. Then she raises her hand and summons wind blades that cut through the wolves like it's nothing. Seeing this, Arata becomes surprised and asks if it was magic, while Rihanna smiles, saying that that should do it. Just then, Arata spots a wolf that somehow managed to survive, sneaking up behind Rihanna. Just as the wolf jumps at her, Arata pushes Rihanna aside and blocks the attack with his arm, but our guy doesn't even flinch and stands there like it doesn't hurt at all. Even the poor mutt feels surprised at his reaction. Rihanna is horrified and turns around to check on him, but he casually says that maybe the wolf got weakened by her spell. After that, he punches it and sends it flying straight into a tree like a cannonball. This shocks both of them, and Arata's mind flashes back to yesterday when the same thing happened to the rabbit. Seeing this, Rihanna just stares at him with a worried look and asks who he really was. Just then, something makes Rihanna feel horrified, and she tells Arata to run away as fast as he can when she gives the signal. Hearing this, Arata turns around and goes pale when he sees a massive alpha wolf walking through the trees with enough force to shake the ground. The wolf grins at them while it prepares to attack, and even Arata can feel the bloodthirsty aura coming off of it, and he immediately realizes that there's no way they can win even if they fight it together. Rihanna prepares a strong spell and shoots the alpha wolf with a massive wind blade, but to her horror, it does nothing at all. It looks like she will turn into some premium dog food as the massive beast leaps straight at her with its jaws open, but Arata intervenes at the last moment and pushes her out of the way. He checks if she's okay, but Rihanna starts yelling at him and asks why he didn't run. She tells him to leave her behind and that she will slow the wolf down and buy him time to escape. Hearing this, Arata looks at her and says there's no way he's letting someone like her die here, and then he turns toward the wolf and says that he will be its opponent. Deep down, he knows that he can't win against the massive beast, but decides that he's got this second chance at life, and he's not going to live with the regret of letting someone die on his watch. And even if he loses, he's fine with being able to buy some time for Rihanna to escape. Rihanna begs him to stop, but Arata charges forward with his fist and slams it into the wolf with everything he has, and the impact sends the wolf flying into the sky faster than NASA's mission to space. Arata watches the massive wolf zoom out into the distance like Team Rocket and then looks down at his own fist, realizing that he's actually really strong, and thinks that the god took the strong part really seriously when he wished for a strong body that doesn't get sick or hurt. After that, he turns to Rihanna to make an excuse for this absurd feat, but finds her still shocked and looking up at the sky like a statue. With that, Arata lets out a deep sigh and talks to God in his mind, saying that there should be a limit to everything. The gods accidentally killed Arata and reincarnated him into a new world with a body free from sickness and injury and the ability to copy any skill just by watching it. With these powers, he starts a quiet life on an uninhabited island, but he feels the abilities the god gave him are a bit like cheating. Meanwhile, Rihanna is still in shock because she has never seen a human take down a monster so easily and asks if that kind of power is normal for him. Arata, with his IQ of a soggy rice cracker, is not sure how to respond and hesitantly calls it magic, to which Rihanna smiles and says that even with her body strengthening technique, she could never do something like that, and assumes Arata is hinting that his magic is stronger than a mage of 7 stars. Arata flinches at her words and quickly denies knowing anything about magic because he knows if he tells her the truth about his reincarnation and the powers from the gods, she'll probably think he's insane. Rihanna notices his thoughtful expression and apologizes for pressuring him and thanks him for saving her from the massive wolf. Hearing this, Arata thinks that if their roles were reversed, he'd probably be just as curious, but he doesn't want her to feel bad, so he reassures her that he's not mad at all. Rihanna puffs up her cheeks and asks if he sees her as a child, to which Arata quickly clarifies that's not what he meant and asks if being a 7-star mage is really that amazing. Hearing this, she glares at him, which makes Arata realize he said something dumb again. But Rihanna is shocked that he doesn't know about the 7-star mages and wonders how someone could be so isolated, to which Arata says he doesn't remember anything, but Rihanna assumes it's just an excuse. Then she explains that the title of 7-star mage is given to the strongest mages in the country that are powerful enough to fight dragons, and they're admired all across the continent, and she's the youngest one in history. Arata praises her, to which Rihanna looks away shyly and thinks how even with full body magic, she couldn't do anything close to what he did. That's why she's curious about him, but Arata thinks that if he ever sets foot on the mainland, he'll probably be captured. Then Rihanna reminds him they need to find a water source, to which he agrees and tells her to follow him because he can hear the sound of water ahead. They go deeper into the forest and discover a wide stream, which impresses Rihanna that he was right. Arata kneels by the stream to check if the water is safe to drink, and after confirming it's fine, he offers Rihanna to drink it. But when he turns back, he finds her already chopping vegetables and making soup on a floating table she summoned. Arata calls out to her, to which she glares at him and asks what he wants, and our poor boy notices the focused look in her eyes that is like someone who's used to handling a knife. He asks where she got all the cooking supplies from, and she casually says she used storage magic, and Arata is confused by her answer until she explains that with her storage magic, she can store anything at any place and time, and her storage capacity is way bigger than most mages because she's a top-tier mage. Arata is impressed and watches her with a grin while she tells him to sit back and relax while she cooks. He nods and thinks how insanely cool that magic is and how he'd love to have one too. Just then, he sees a strange ripple appear in front of him and he sticks his hand into it. His eyes widen when he notices his hand disappear in the ripple and wonders if he's using storage magic. He is confused if this is the power the god gave him or if it is the cheat ability that lets him copy someone's skills just by seeing them. Rihanna turns and tells him to stop messing around and asks what he's doing. But Arata quickly pulls his hand back and shrugs like nothing happened. The portal vanishes and Rihanna doesn't seem to notice anything, which is lucky because he doesn't want to be in trouble again. Rihanna then asks him to hold the pot while she sets the table and walks over to the pile of broken stones and makes a full table out of nowhere with her magic. Arata can't help but be amazed again while she finishes preparing in just a few moments and lays everything out. Arata praises her once again, to which she explains that she is an S-rank adventurer, and she's clearly used to having meals in places like these. Then she serves him a steaming bowl of tomato soup, which makes his stomach growl. And bro thinks he might have lost his aura points, so he immediately apologizes, but Rihanna just grins, calling him a little kid. She gestures for him to sit down and Arata reaches for his chair. But then his brain starts glitching like an old CD as he sees a girl with fluffy ears and 9 tails sitting there and smiling. Arata stares at her with confusion when he realizes that she is a beast girl, and the girl leans forward to sniff the soup and then turns to Rihanna, calling her big sister. Then she starts eating and Arata watches in silence, not sure what to do in this situation. He looks at Rihanna and notices that she is shivering, so he leans in to ask if she is alright. But she insists she's fine, pretending everything's normal. He notices her eyes keep darting toward the girl and wonders if something is wrong with her. Meanwhile, the pot is already empty and Arata realizes if they don't stop her now, she'll eat everything. He glares at the girl and scolds her for stealing someone else's food, but Rihanna instantly tells him to go easy and let her eat as much as she wants. Arata disagrees and says that she might look like a child, but that's exactly why she needs to be taught properly. Rihanna gives in and tells him to let her go, to which Arata notices Rihanna's panic and gently puts the girl down and asks her name. The girl says her name is Luna, and Arata lowers himself to her level and calmly explains that they were about to eat, and she had just taken his portion. Luna's ears droop and she apologizes softly, to which Arata pats her head, saying it's fine, and she smiles back at him, which melts his heart. Then he turns to Rihanna and asks if they have enough food, and she explains that she had prepared enough supplies to last half a year, assuming it would take that long to reach the faraway island. He apologizes and asks if she can cook something for Luna. It surprises Rihanna, but when she sees Luna's bright smile, she agrees. Luna doesn't believe it at first and asks again if it's really okay, to which Rihanna nods and Luna happily thanks her. In response, Rihanna smiles and says she'll get started. asking her to wait just a bit. While she heads off to cook, Arata leans back and thinks that he can't keep depending on Rihanna like this, or he's going to end up a background character. Luna interrupts his thoughts and asks for his name, to which he smiles and introduces himself. Then he remembers that he asked the god for an island that had everything he needed to live alone, so he decides to do things on his own to lower the burden on Rihanna. Arata thinks about it and realizes that this should be an island without humans and wonders if there are other beastmen like Luna living here too, so he asks Luna if she lives on this island. Luna nods in yes and says that she belongs to the tribe of divine beasts and that there are many other tribes as well, like the demon tribe, the ancient dragon tribe, and the vampire tribe. Arata smiles as he understands that there are really no human tribes here. Meanwhile, Rihanna finishes cooking and brings the soup to the table, and they sit down and eat together. Once they finish eating, Rihanna uses magic to set up a large tent with ease and declares that this will be their base from now on. Once Luna goes inside and closes the tent behind her, Rihanna suggests they take some time to talk about what happened today. Once they sit inside the tent, Rihanna tells Arata again that she is one of the 7-star mages and explains that she was going to the faraway island to find an elixir that can make a person immortal. She mentions that she traveled here with a few knights, but she can judge from the current situation that they didn't survive. She further adds that if Luna is indeed telling the truth, then it is highly possible that this is the faraway island. Hearing this, Arata thinks about how all the tribes Luna mentioned sound serious and asks Rihanna if Luna is just an ordinary girl. However, Rihanna sternly tells him that he doesn't understand anything because he doesn't know magic, but she can sense that Luna has far more magical power than she does, which is why she was so scared earlier. Rihanna calls Luna a monster who would cause worldwide destruction if she appeared on the mainland. Hearing this, Arata says she doesn't seem to be like this, to which Rihanna agrees and says she just wants to warn Arata about how strong she is. Then Arata asks Rihanna about the other tribes, and she explains that the divine beasts and demons were once part of ancient mythology, and these creatures are at the level of folklore from the time before humans even existed. She mentions the dragons from ancient tales who destroyed entire cities and the vampires, which are considered made-up monsters no one believes in. Despite this, they've encountered a beastman like Luna, which proves that this island is far from ordinary and they don't know what kind of monsters they might meet next. She warns Arata that until they explore the island fully, it's best for them to not run into these monsters because no matter how strong they are, they're still humans, so they must be careful. Arata then asks about the elixir and Rihanna says they don't even know if it's really on this island and that her entire expedition team is gone, and to handle the situation properly, they would need real knights. But Arata has already decided to stay on the island and doesn't want strangers to come, so he tells Rihanna that if they want to leave, they'll have to figure something out to get a boat. Hearing this, Rihanna says that Arata will have to work for it, to which Arata smiles and thinks how optimistic she is. But he realizes that to live peacefully on this island, he needs to cooperate with Rihanna, and since his body doesn't get injured, he won't die easily, and with his ability to copy skills, he can ask Rihanna to teach him a few things. He plans to live here for the rest of his life, but Rihanna has a different opinion, so he decides to cooperate with her as much as he can. The next morning, Arata wakes up thinking that his forever single self never imagined he'd end up sharing a tent with a girl. Rihanna is already awake and wishes him a good morning, and she notices the dark circles under his eyes, but he brushes it off and decides to wash his face by the river. He steps out of the tent and takes a deep breath and hopes today will go smoothly after everything that happened yesterday. Just then, Luna approaches and greets him cheerfully, but what scares Arata is a beastman who is standing next to Luna and clearly giving off gangsta vibes. When Arata asks who he is, the man responds by asking if Arata is an intruder on the island. Hearing that, poor Arata closes his eyes and starts doubting if today will be peaceful at all. The beastman keeps staring at him, and Arata realizes from just one look that he's incredibly strong. The man finally speaks and introduces himself as Aluga from the tribe of divine beasts. He asks Arata for his name, and after Arata introduces himself, Aluga glances at the tent and asks about the girl charging her magical power inside. He turns to Rihanna and says that if she intends to fight, he'll gladly take her on, but if she doesn't want this, then she should stop because she doesn't stand a chance against him. Hearing this, Rihanna steps out of the tent and Arata is surprised to see someone like Rihanna, who is a top-class 7-star mage, showing that kind of expression that makes him realize just how powerful this beastman really is. Arata cautiously looks at them, but before he can say anything, Luna pushes Iluga and reminds him that he promised not to fight. Iluga admits it, but says they were the ones who started it, to which Luna says it was because of his scary face and tells him about the delicious meal they offered her. Hearing this, Arata thinks that maybe Iluga isn't their enemy after all and asks what business he has here, and the beastman points out that they are standing in his territory. To which Arata quickly apologizes and explains that they have no idea how they even got here and they didn't know whose land this was. Iluga seems to understand since it is impossible for humans to reach the divine land of Arcadia. Hearing this, Arata thinks back to what Rihanna told him and realizes they must be talking about the same place. Iluga tells them to avoid doing anything harmful and stay cautious because there are demon and dragon tribes on the island who wouldn't hesitate to chase them down. Arata thinks about the dangerous species living here and asks Iluga to tell them more about the island. Iluga scowls but admits that it would be hard for them to get around without any knowledge, so he agrees to bring them a map and disappears just as fast as he arrived. Arata watches him vanish and thinks he's a good guy, while Luna smiles and says Iluga always acts tough, but deep down he's dependable and kind. Suddenly, Rihanna grabs her head and Arata quickly catches her, asking what's wrong, to which she replies that a massive wave of concentrated magic hit her and now her body is trembling. Hearing this, Arata wonders if this is something unique to mages, but it doesn't seem likely that just being around an island inhabitant would leave Rihanna like this. Luna lowers her ears, thinking it's all her fault, but Rihanna strokes her head and tells her it's their fault and it happened because her magic is weak. That cheers Luna up a little and Rihanna thinks about how Luna never blames others despite having so much power and always takes responsibility. Arata thinks the same and feels respect for her, even though she's younger than him. Just then Iluga returns with the map, but when he sees them already sitting at the table and eating, he gets furious because he spent all that time getting the map, and they're just relaxing and enjoying food. Rihanna offers him to join them, to which Iluga sits down next to Luna, and after tasting the food, he shouts across the island asking why the hell it's so delicious. Seeing this, Arata assumes it must be a beast tribe thing to shout while eating good food. After stuffing themselves to the fullest, Luna and Iluga lie down on the grass like wild boars, while Rihanna and Arata go to the river to wash the dishes. After cleaning the plates, Arata wonders about the relationship between Iluga and Luna. He has noticed that Luna looks like a fox and Iluga looks more like a wolf, so they can be blood relatives, but they act like family. Just then Rihanna thanks Arata, and at first he thinks she's talking about the dishes, but Rihanna explains she meant earlier when Iluga started threatening them and Arata stood up for her. He finally understands what she means, but to him it was a small misunderstanding since Iluga didn't turn out to be their enemy. But Rihanna never expected someone would stand up for her, so she smiles, and Arata notices a faint blush on her face, which makes his heart race. Then she suggests they should head back to the tent and Arata agrees because he is excited to ask Iluga about this island. Iluga shows him a map of Arcadia and points out the territories of the beastmen that live here and the demons and dragons that live farther away. He says they don't get along well, but since fighting always ends in big losses, they only clash now and then. Elves live in the west, but they rarely leave their territory, though they still run into beasts sometimes. Hearing this, Arata asks if any of the races ever try to get along, but Iluga says no and explains that it's not about survival or peace, but they've lived here so long that they've stopped caring to fight. At first Arata gets afraid of having to face all kinds of powerful monsters, but after hearing this, he feels a bit more relaxed. Then he tells Iluga he wants to live on this island and asks if there's a good place to stay, which shocks Iluga, and he says there's no place here for a weak human to survive. Arata wants to explain about the body that God gave him and how he might manage, but doesn't know how to bring it up. Just then they hear a loud noise and Iluga's eyes gleam, and he reveals that an emperor boar is coming. Rihanna doesn't get what that means, but Luna lights up and says it's a feast. When Arata asks about it, Iluga explains that it's a giant chunk of meat, but hard to find since they live underground. Hearing this, Rihanna warns Arata that despite its appearance, this boar is an extremely strong monster, and if it showed up in a city, all the knights of the country would be called in. Just then, a loud roar shakes the forest and the giant boar bursts out, smashing trees as it charges toward them. Arata and Rihanna stand in shock, while Iluga watches the boar and says that it looks hungry since it was under the ground. Then he tells Luna to stay away, but Luna protests, saying adults always say that and then take the best parts for themselves. Hearing this, Aluga challenges her to take down the boar herself if she wants the best cut, to which Luna instantly agrees. Meanwhile, the boar charges straight at them at full speed and Arata isn't sure they can stop it and worries that if they fail, someone might get hurt. He glances at Rihanna and decides to cope with it, to which she panics and tries to stop him, but Arata puts his faith in the power he received from God and thinks that if he can't stop a single beast like this, then there's no way he can survive here. Rihanna yells at him to move, but Arata stays put, and just when the boar gets closer, Arata holds it back with his bare hands with his full-on Hulk energy. Everyone is stunned, especially Aluga and Luna, who can't believe what they just saw, and Aluga wonders if Arata is even human. Arata ignores their shocked faces and yells that the meat is his, stating that in this world, it's either kill or be killed. Then he apologizes to the boar and throws a punch with all his strength, and the impact knocks Aluga and Luna off the boar and sends the beast flying high into the sky. Arata celebrates that the imperial boar is his, but as everyone looks up in silence, they realize something's wrong because the prey is gone. Arata looks up and finally realizes what happened, and they all cry over the lost meat together. Rihanna and Arata stand there and look into the distance where the massive boar has torn through a large part of the forest. Aluga shouts at Arata for ruining an imperial boar, to which Luna also agrees and calls Arata evil. Poor Arata doesn't know how to respond and simply apologizes. Seeing this, Rihanna steps in and tells everyone to calm down and promises to make a meal for them later, but only if they forgive Arata, to which Aluga and Luna reluctantly agree. Arata looks at Rihanna in embarrassment and thanks her for her help. Then Aluga tells him that he can live in this area if he wants to stay on the island because he can easily find food in it. Hearing this, Arata asks why Aluga said that he couldn't stay here, to which Aluga explains that it's because he thought Arata was human. He then tells Arata that no human can stop an imperial boar or send it flying with one blow, to which Arata exhales and thinks that he is really a human. Aluga smiles and says he's a cool guy, and since Luna has already grown attached to him, he can stay here. Arata thanks Aluga for the permission. Then he turns to Rihanna and Luna and asks what about her, to which she replies that she still has no way to go home and can't survive alone on the island, so she's decided to stay with Arata for now. Luna exclaims happily that they can keep playing together. Arata smiles, glad to see Luna and Rihanna having fun. Suddenly, Arata's face changes as he looks up at the sky while pointing his finger at a massive black dragon hovering above them with its massive wings. Aluga clicks his tongue and says that it's a kid Bahamut from the ancient dragon's tribe. Arata notices that the dragon is holding the same boar he had sent flying earlier and wonders how it got it, but just before he can think of anything else, the dragon drops the boar and sends it crashing down toward them. Everyone starts screaming, but Arata tells them to get down and uses his op strength to catch the massive boar and saves them all. After that, he asks if everyone was alright. Luna tells Arata that he is amazing and Aluga nods, saying that Arata is not human. Just then, Arata notices the black dragon flying down towards them and throws the boar down. Aluga asks if Arata is sure he can stop the dragon, to which Arata confidently says yes, and Aluga tells him to handle it while he gets ready to strike. After that, Arata resolves himself to catch the flying lizard, but then the dragon suddenly transforms mid-air and becomes a girl with dragon horns. She smiles at Arata, thinking herself the Beyonce of this world, and says that it is brave of him to propose to her like that. Everyone is shocked while Arata is unable to understand what's going on because the girl suddenly hugs him and calls him my lord while saying his body is strong and perfect for hugging. Arata doesn't know what to say back, so he just thanks her because he can sense that she doesn't have any bad intentions. But he still has no idea why she's calling him my lord. He turns to Rihanna to ask for help and notices that she is feeling sick again and has fallen on her knees. He runs over to her and asks if she's okay, to which she says she just got hit with too much energy again. Arata says that she doesn't look okay, and it must be the magical pressure from Aluga and the dragon kid, so he picks her up in his arms and takes her out of there. She blushes and tries to say something, but our guy refuses to listen to her complaints and bolts away from the group with all his strength while the dragon girl tries to chase after them, but Aluga keeps her in check. They run to a river deep in the forest where Arata sets Rihanna down against a tree. He notices her pale face and hugs her as he tells her to calm down and breathe slowly and deeply. For a while they just sit there in an awkward embrace while she tries to catch her breath. Arata is embarrassed to see that Rihanna feels the same until she suddenly falls asleep in his arms, which surprises him, but then he smiles because she must be really tired after everything that happened today. Just then, he hears a rustle from the bushes, and it's Luna who asks if Rihanna is okay and if she's hurting her just by being near. Arata pats her head and tells her not to worry and says that Rihanna actually likes spending time with her. Then he suggests that if she's really worried, then she should try to suppress her magic as much as she can when she's near Rihanna, and Luna nods, saying that she'll try her best. Then Arata asks Luna to watch Rihanna for a while, and he will go and ask why the dragon girl came to them in the first place. Meanwhile, Beluga is holding the girl who keeps demanding to be let go, but he refuses because he knows she'll just run off. Then she sees Arata coming out of the forest and gets excited, while Beluga asks if everything is alright, and Arata says that Rihanna has calmed down now. He walks up to the girl and asks her name, to which she smiles and says that she's Tiltu, the daughter of the great Bahamut and part of the ancient dragon tribe that lives on the island. Arata imagines Bahamut as some powerful dragon he's only ever read about in comics, then introduces himself and says he just started living here yesterday. She praises his name and once again calls him my lord, to which he finally asks why she keeps calling him my lord. Tiltu looks confused and says it should be obvious because he proposed to her with passion and she happily accepted. Arata is stunned because he has no idea when he proposed to her, which makes Tiltu shocked, and she asks him about the imperial boar he sent, which is a strong magical beast and in their tribe. That's how you propose. Arata realizes she's talking about that boar that fell from the sky and tells her to explain exactly what she means. She reveals that she was resting at her place when an imperial boar fell from the sky, and when she went to check where it came from, she found him. Since the female dragons only accept those stronger than them, she thought it was a marriage proposal, and she sent the boar back as a way to show that she accepted the proposal and that they would now raise a family and eat together. Hearing this, Aratai's brain short-circuits, and he realizes that it was just a huge misunderstanding and the whole boar thing was just an accident, but he still feels like it's his fault for not explaining anything. So he tells her that it was just bad timing and the boar just happened to land near her by chance, to which Tiltu asks if he never meant to propose, and Arata sadly nods. She sits on the ground and starts drawing circles with her wand and says that even among dragons she's too strong and no one ever wants to approach her, and she really thought she had found someone. Arata feels terrible because even though she's young, she seems really lonely and he doesn't want to hurt her. He looks at the boar and gets an idea, then calls out to Tiltu and says they should all eat it together. She looks at him with tears in her eyes and asks if he really means it and if he's not just tricking her to send her away. But he takes her hand and says they can all eat together like friends. Tiltu stares at him in surprise, but then she smiles and says she's a good cook. She shows him she can breathe fire, so Arata tells her to handle the roasting, and they all head back to Rihanna to ask how they should cook the boar. Tiltu shouts happily that she'll help. Arata walks into the forest and calls out to Rihanna and Luna, to which both of them wave and Rihanna greets Beluga. The divine beast apologizes for scaring her earlier by going Super Saiyan, but she says that it's fine, and Beluga gives her a small smile and tells Arata that she's quite strong as well. Meanwhile, Rihanna looks at Tiltu and asks who she is since she didn't see her transform before passing out, to which Tiltu cheerfully introduces herself and says she's one of the strongest dragons on the island. Hearing this, Rihanna turns to Arata for confirmation, and he nods and says that she's the dragon from earlier. Just then, Tiltu hugs Arata without warning and says she's also his wife. Hearing this, Rihanna looks at Arata with questionable eyes, wondering if he is a weird lolicon. Arata panics and thinks that she probably sees him as some kind of creep now, and starts explaining everything to her. After catching up with everything, Rihanna wonders if Arata is blessed by Loki, because he keeps attracting trouble one after the other. Meanwhile, Tiltu just smiles and tells Rihanna to call her by name because they both love the same guy. Her words drop a bombshell on Arata, while Rihanna quickly says she's only known Arata for 2 days and they're not lovers. But Tiltu says that's fine because she's only known her husband for a few hours and still feels the same way. Then she asks if girls aren't supposed to want someone strong who can protect them, to which Rihanna blushes even harder and says it's not like that. Just then Luna says she feels the same way since Arata was holding Rihanna some time ago. Hearing this, Beluga decides it's time to get back to the boar, to which Rihanna agrees and heads off first, while Arata stands there for a moment and wonders just how exhausted he's going to be if this keeps up. When they reach the boar, Arata finally sees just how massive it really is. Rihanna tells Aluga she'll open the belly and he can handle the meat, and Tiltu lifts the boar at a reasonable height. Rihanna thanks Tiltu and thinks about how rough things have been since she arrived on the island. But now it's time to show her skills, and then she activates her magic and summons a flurry of wind blades that instantly slice open the belly of the beast. Aluga smiles and tells them to leave the rest to him, and then he jumps up and grabs the monster's gut and completely cleans it with a few solid blows. Seeing this, Arata says it's amazing, and Luna smiles too and tells him that Aluga is the best hunter in their tribe. Once it's done, Aluga wipes the remaining blood from his face, and Rihanna appraises his work and brings him some towels. Now all that's left is to clean the meat and begin preparing it. Arata also thanks Aluga for his help, and Rihanna asks them how they're going to eat all of it, to which Arata asks if they can do something using magic. Rihanna nods but tells him that her storage magic would keep the food from spoiling, but there's no way she could fit that much into her storage. Then Arata remembers something and suggests putting the meat into his storage magic. He closes his eyes and tries to visualize the meat from the massive imperial boar vanishing into storage and gives the command for it to fit, and all the meat disappears quickly. Everyone praises Arata's storage magic, while Rihanna stands still with a strained smile and asks Arata how he can use storage magic and how much space he actually has, because even a 7-star mage like her doesn't have that much room. Arata laughs nervously while Rihanna says she's definitely going to ask him a lot of questions later. Outside the tent, the boar is roasting over the fire and everyone waits impatiently for it to be done. Aluga says it looks incredible, and Rihanna checks the meat carefully before announcing it's ready and tries to calm them down and says there's plenty for everyone, so they should take their time. Aluga and Arata grab the biggest chunks of meat with their chopsticks, while Luna and Tiltu dip the meat into the sweet sauce Rihanna made. Arata looks at Rihanna and thinks that the piece of meat she's cooking now is the best part of the boar that melts in the mouth. He knows that at this point no one realizes just how good it really is. Arata stares at the meat and claims it as his own, but just before he can grab it, a pair of tongs smacks his hand and Rihanna tells him to share with others. The group enjoys the food through the whole day, and when evening comes, they head to their homes. Later, Rihanna and Arata sit by a fire near the tent, and Rihanna says today was hectic, to which Arata laughs and says yesterday was crazy too, but today was something else entirely. Rihanna thanks him again for saving her, and Arata admits that was probably his fault too, but says he wants to thank her for everything she's done, from making the meal to setting up the tent. Then he says he really wants to live on this island and use his strong body to protect her to prove himself useful. Rihanna looks at him with surprise and tells him that no one has said something like that to her in a long time, because most people just treat her like a tool or a monster. Arata calls it awful, to which Rihanna explains that that's the fate of the 7-star mages, and even though she's considered one of the weaker ones, she is still seen far above normal mages, and no one would ever imagine someone like her needs protection. Arata looks at her sadly, but she smiles and tells him it just proves how weird he is. She explains that if the kind of people they've met on the island show up in the human world, the entire human race would fight against them to save themselves. And Arata is already stronger than them because humans simply aren't capable of what he can do. She says that she didn't want to ask at first, but now she really wants to know who he is. Arata stays silent and thinks about the fact that they've only known each other for 2 days, and he trusts her, but still he's not sure if he should talk about his reincarnation. He is worried that she might think he's crazy or lying, and she might stop trusting him. He looks up and tells himself if she doesn't believe him, he'll just go back to being alone, but he doesn't want to lie to her. Then he turns to her and says that he is not from this world, to which Rihanna stares at him with shock, and after listening to his whole story, she realizes that he once died in another world, and after meeting a god, he was sent to this island. Arata is still not sure how she'll respond, but to his surprise, Rihanna says it actually makes sense. Arata blinks and says he's not lying and waves his hands nervously, to which Rihanna smiles and says that even if it's hard to believe he met a god, everything else about him is way too strange to be normal. She's seen him launch monsters into the air and do things no regular human could ever do, so it's easy for her to believe that he's not from this world. Hearing this, Arata sighs with relief, and Rihanna says that he's worked really hard and hopes to get along with him. Arata is shocked because he expected her to walk away, but instead she smiles, and he thanks her. It's been a full week since Arata arrived on the island, and he feels like he's finally getting used to this life. All his fears about surviving are gone, and he's already used to camping out like this. Rihanna has even started teaching him magic, and now he can use several different kinds of it. Though lately he's been wondering if he's relying on her too much, and he wants to do more so she won't have to worry much. As he walks through the forest, he hears a sound, and suddenly a rabbit runs up to him, and it seems to be the same one he met on his first day. Arata feels guilty for it, and he holds out his hands like before, and the rabbit jumps up and hits him in the stomach. Arata picks him up and strokes the little guy gently. Just then, Rihanna comes out and walks up to him with a soft smile and comments on how he's up much earlier today. Then she turns her attention to the rabbit and asks if she wants to hold it in her arms, but the little guy refuses to sit still, so Arata flicks him lightly on the nose, and the moment he does it, he notices that the rabbit suddenly faints in his hands. He panics and says that he didn't use too much force and turns to Rihanna to ask what he should do. But Rihanna looks at him and asks if he even knows what kind of rabbit it is. Arata shrugs and says he just assumed it was a regular wild rabbit since creatures like that exist in his old world too. But Rihanna stares at him and explains that this one is a calamitous monster. Arata still doesn't understand what that means, so Rihanna adds that it's a catastrophe-level creature, and if one of these shows up in the human world, then only the 7 great mages or the most powerful adventurers would be able to fight it. Arata looks at the rabbit in his hands once again and thinks that it really seems like everything that exists in his previous world is somehow dangerously evolved in this one. And it suddenly makes sense why the rabbit stared at him so strangely before, even when it didn't scratch him. Before he can process more, he hears Tiltu charging at him and hugs him with that same clingy energy. Rihanna greets her and asks how she's doing this morning, and Tiltu cheerfully says that she came to play with my lord. Hearing this, Arata thinks about what kind of game she has in mind, and Tiltu notices the rabbit and gets even more excited and says that they're quick and strong. Luna suddenly appears and hugs Arata, but when Arata smiles at her, she blushes, and seeing this, Tiltu hides behind his back, so Arata gently asks what's wrong. Rihanna strokes Luna's head and compliments her. Seeing this, Tiltu pouts and demands the same treatment, so Arata hesitantly pats her head and she lights up with satisfaction. After that, they decide to go into the forest, and once they are there, Arata suggests a hunting competition with him, and Tiltu on one team and Rihanna and Luna on the other, and the winner would be the one who catches the most prey. Luna immediately tells Rihanna to try her best, while Tiltu shouts confidently that their team will win, and then everyone runs into the woods in opposite directions. Luna manages to catch a deer, but Arata and Tiltu struggle to find anything at all. Tiltu hears Luna praising Rihanna and grumbles, to which Arata explains that Rihanna is an SS rank adventurer and probably knows everything about hunting, but he also notices that there's no sign of any animals around them at all. Tiltu begins to brag that the animals must be too afraid of her monstrous dragon power to show themselves, and Arata thinks that's probably true, and it's not helpful for the competition. He wonders if Luna is having the same problem, unless Rihanna is doing all the work for their team. Tiltu yells that they'll lose if this goes on and insists they need to do something about it. But Arata doesn't have strong magic and doesn't know any hunting tricks yet, so he stares at his hand and tries to think. Then an idea hits him, and he quickly sits down to concentrate and thinks this is the body that God gave him, and if he really focuses, then maybe he can do something. Suddenly he hears the sound of prey, so he stands up and starts running, and Tiltu follows him. At first he thinks it's a boar again, but what he finds instead is a whole pack of rabbits sprinting through the forest. At first he thinks they're coming to attack, but then he realizes they're actually running away from Tiltu because she's a dragon, and now he can't let them escape. As the rabbits start to scatter, he quickly picks up a stone and takes many down. Tiltu also manages to grab one and proudly shouts to Arata, who points out that there's one left. He kneels to the ground and uses the earth magic that Rihanna taught him and envisions a trap, and the earth rises into a cage just as the last rabbit reaches it. Tiltu warns him that a rabbit could easily break through something that flimsy, but the rabbit doesn't attack and faints. Tiltu stares with shock while Arata walks over and asks if she's okay, to which she mutters how different he really is. After that, they return to the tent and Luna tells them that their hunt went great. Iluga is there too, and he greets Arata and says that he will take care of the game they caught. Seeing this, Tiltu hides behind Arata and tells him that Iluga called her a lonely dragon, and Arata recalls how she only talks freely to him and Rihanna but struggles with others. During the boar hunt, she was so excited that it didn't matter, but now that things have calmed down, she's back to being shy. She once told him that it's hard for an ancient dragon to make friends, and that makes Arata want to help her even more. Just then Luna asks Arata how many rabbits they caught, and before he can answer, he looks at Tiltu and asks her instead. She blushes and nervously says they caught 3, to which Luna grabs Tiltu's hand and excitedly asks her to explain how they managed to do it, because rabbits are usually hard to catch. Tiltu glances at Arata like she wants him to speak for her, but he just waves her forward and encourages her to try and thinks that if she can open up like this, then no one will ever call her a weak dragon again. Tiltu straightens up and shyly tells Luna that they'll start training right away, and the girls smile at each other while Arata watches them with quiet pride. Luna calls Arata over and says that she and Tiltu will go play until dinner is ready, and he watches them run off together like best friends. It's been a month now since Arata first came to this island, and as he looks at the map, he realizes that they still can't explore the southern part. Iluga confirms this and explains that the younger members of the demon and dragon tribes are hostile, and while Arata might be fine, he's worried about Riene. Arata then asks about the territory where the elves live, and Iluga says that the elves prefer to stay isolated, but no one can say how they would react to seeing a human. Luna mentions that the spirits live there too, so she thinks they'll be fine if they're careful. Arata thinks about what he's learned and realizes that each tribe seems to have its own hierarchy. For example, in the Beast Tribe village, the normal beastmen live ordinary lives while the divine beastmen hold higher status. Meanwhile, in the Elven village, the supreme elves are in charge and the ones who control the spirits are treated like gods, so maybe the best place to visit first would be the Beast Tribe village. Iluga agrees and says he'll tell Arata everything he needs to know, but advises him to bring a gift, like the meat of an imperial boar, and the villagers will welcome them with open arms. Arata nods and then asks if there's any way to leave the island, but Iluga tells him that's impossible and explains that there is a powerful barrier around the island that makes it completely sealed off. One can enter the island easily, but leaving the island is impossible. He reveals that, according to the elder of his village, that barrier was created by the god to trap the strongest monsters so they can't escape into the world and bring chaos. He says that this is the divine island of Arcadia, and the world outside is peaceful only because everything dangerous is locked up here. Hearing this, Arata thinks that he was reincarnated because he wanted to explore the island. But it was never the right place for Riene. She has been helping him since he got here, so Arata decides to help her in return and promises to find a way for her to leave the island. He thinks he'll live a good life here and make sure Riene gets home safely. That night they are sitting in the tent, and Arata tells Riene the first thing they need to do is visit the beastmen and ask to stay in their territory because they're already living here without asking, so they need to get permission first. Riene agrees to him, and once they finish planning, Arata asks who wants to bathe first, and Riene instantly gets ready and explains that she's all sweaty. After that, Arata sits outside the tent and thinks that even if there are no bandits, he still needs to stay alert because there are other monsters. He knows Riene can only handle weaker monsters, but his god-given body can sense any danger, so he focuses, and right then he hears something coming from above. As he looks up, he notices a shadow in the sky and a human shape flying toward him. As it gets closer, he sees it's a girl with long hair and elf ears who lands in front of him with a calm look and says she came because she smelled something good. Her eyes remind him of a predator like Iluga or Tiltu, and it feels like she is more powerful. She introduces herself as Wilhelmina Vermilion and says that she's a vampire who's lived here a long time. Arata tells her his name and says he somehow ended up here without knowing how. She smiles and says something interesting is finally happening on this island. Then she looks at the house and asks if she can taste the thing she smelled, and before he can react, she summons a huge crystal fragment and launches it. Arata destroys it right before it hits the door and yells at her for doing it, but she just asks how fast he is since she attacked first. Arata stays calm and says he is confident in his fitness, to which Wilhelmina laughs and summons dozens of crystals that rush at him at full speed. Arata curses and shatters them one by one, but one slips through and hits the house. Arata rushes to the wreckage to check on Riene, but she steps out of the smoke with only a towel on and tells him not to look. He apologizes but quickly refocuses because the vampire could still attack. But she claps and calls it amazing and tells them to flirt more. Hearing this, Riene asks who she is, and Arata points at Wilhelmina and says that she is some kind of top vampire, to which Wilhelmina laughs again and tells them to continue their flirting. Arata says he still doesn't get what she means, and Wilhelmina explains that unlike normal vampires who drink blood, higher ones like her feed on emotions instead. And currently she is enjoying the embarrassment of Riane, and she thanks them for the delicious love comedy, though Arata has no idea what comedy she's talking about. He thinks back on the attack and realizes that she's too weak to even scratch him, and the spell was aimed more at Riane, and it just landed near the bathroom, which basically means she never had any intention of hurting anyone. Then she flies closer to them and says she really loved the change in Riane's emotion for the man she loves. Hearing this, Riane yells that she'll not allow that to happen again and starts strengthening her magic. Seeing this, Wilhelmina says she is sensing Riane's anger with a spicy little pinch of shame, and she likes that too. Just then, Rina unleashes a storm of wind blades that rip the vampire apart right there, and her body shreds into pieces. Riane stares in disbelief as those pieces turn into a cloud of bats, swirling above them before reforming into Wilhelmina again without causing her any harm. Then she walks towards them and asks if they really thought that would be enough to kill her. Then she winks at Rina and says that her emotions made the perfect dessert this time, and with a little stretch, she says she's satisfied for now since she managed to get a good meal from some random strangers. With that, she turns around and tells Rina to be more lovey-dovey next time. Both Riane and Arata stare at her in silence as she vanishes into the trees. Arata is still thinking about the useless stuff she said while Rina is trembling with rage. Arata exhales slowly, and he can already feel that peaceful days might be far off. A few days after Wilhelmina's sudden appearance, Arata makes his way to the village of divine beasts. He is standing at the village entrance and thinks that he imagined it to be more fantasy-like, but it just looks like a completely ordinary village. Just then, Iluga and the girl standing beside him greet the guests with a warm smile, and Riane immediately asks who the girl is, to which Iluga awkwardly introduces her as his wife. Hearing this, Arata and Riane both freeze in place, while the girl bows politely and says her name is Libya. In response, Arata introduces himself and Riane and teases Egla about his marriage. Libya nods along and reveals that Iluga had been sneaking out of the house lately, and she was worried he might be cheating on her, and if that was true, she'd have drowned him in the ocean. Iluga then shifts the topic and asks if they should show them around. As they walk through the village, they meet other beastmen, and Arata quickly notices that none of them have the kind of strength Iluga does, to which Iluga explains that the people here are ordinary beastmen now, but long ago their ancestors were mighty divine beasts, and some of that strength still runs in certain bloodlines, and those who inherited that power live at the top of the hill, while the rest live in the village below. Hearing this, Riane realizes it's kind of like nobles and commoners, and Iluga reveals that they never asked for worship or titles, but the villagers themselves started calling them gods. While the divine beasts hunt and protect, the beastmen grow crops and provide for the community in other ways. Luna adds that everyone's busy with their own roles and they're just trying to survive on this dangerous island. Arata now understands that since the beast people have no powers, they rely on the strong to survive. Finally, Iluga says they've arrived and points to a massive building that looks more like a palace than a home. Looking at this rich living style, Arata is near to thinking that Iluga shits diamonds and asks if it's his house. But Iluga shakes his head and says this is the Elder's mansion and explains that the divine beasts like him were born with strength passed down from the Ancient Ones, but the Elder still carries that legacy more than anyone else. Luna grins and says their grandmother is so strong that even if all the divine beasts fought her together, they wouldn't win. After that, they go inside and see a woman sitting there giving 10 of 10 baddie vibes and casually smoking a pipe. She greets them, and both Arata and Riane are stunned to see her. She chuckles and says that they must be the strangers she's heard about and introduces herself as Phoenix, the head of the divine beast tribe. Arata and Riane introduce themselves and thank her for the warm welcome, to which Phoenix tells them not to be formal and just call her Suzaku. She says that she hates being called Elder, but Iluga insists that it's better to call her Elder. They tease each other for a while, and it's clear they've known each other for a long time, even if they're not related by blood. Arata can see the strong bond between them, and it makes him smile. After that, Phoenix says Luna told her a lot about the two of them, and since Luna likes them, it means they are not bad. Then she raises a finger and gathers a small light at the tip and throws a fireball at Arata. And Arata, who always thinks from his knees, touches it with his hand and it bursts into a wave of flame, which shocks everyone, but Arata just stands there casually as he holds the fire. Seeing this, Phoenix bursts out laughing and praises him. Rihanna stares in disbelief and says that fire has more magic than she's ever held in her life, and she didn't think Phoenix would fire it so casually and dumbass Arata would catch it too. Arata just smiles awkwardly and says he didn't realize how strong it was and finally puts the fire out. Then, Phoenix steps closer and says she hasn't felt this warmed up in a long time and tells Iluga to handle the rest and show them the village, and later they will have a party. Iluga apologizes for Phoenix's behavior, to which Arata says he is getting used to this island. As evening comes, everyone gathers in the central square for the celebration. Phoenix raises her mug and announces to everyone that Iluga has brought new friends, and one of them is a monster who remained unharmed against her flames. The villagers cheer, and the party begins. Luna hands Rihanna a plate of food, and Arata thinks he was a bit worried about Rihanna, but he can sense that the divine beasts have suppressed their magic for now. Arata then tries the food and enjoys the taste of the cutlet sandwiches made by Rihanna using emperor boar meat. When Phoenix sees this, she also takes a bite and starts screaming that it's better than any boar meat she's had before, and then she hugs Rihanna tightly and compliments her cooking. Just then a loud explosion shakes the square, and a few people go flying. Arata and Rihanna look at the chaos tiredly, and Phoenix waves it off and says that the young ones are getting wild. Arata doesn't think that explains it as he notices someone getting closer. Just then, a huge guy named Gaius, who is a descendant of the divine beast Behemoth, stomps toward them holding one of Rihanna's sandwiches and asks who made it. Rihanna nervously says it was her, to which the beast points at her and says she will be his bride. Rihanna becomes shocked as Gaius says it again, and when Arata steps forward like a Korean oppa to protect her, she feels relieved. Seeing this, Gaius growls and asks what Arata wants, to which Arata says a random guy can't just show up and declare something like that. Gaius lifts the sandwich again and asks if Rihanna made it. Then he turns to her and shouts that she must become his wife and make these for him forever. Luna notices something is wrong with Rihanna, and Arata sees her holding a hand over her mouth. Arata thinks that the divine beasts have been holding back their magic for Rihanna's sake, but Gaius is doing the opposite and trying to overpower her. Arata gets clearly pissed off, but Gaius tells him to move or he will throw him away, to which Arata shrugs off his jacket and says he's welcome to try. As the two are ready to confront each other, Suzaku smirks and says fighting over a girl is a fine idea, but kicking out a guest is bad manners. Hearing this, Gaius roars for her not to interfere, to which Suzaku snaps back that he's the only one ruining the fun, but she understands how he feels. Then she raises her hand and a massive flame appears, and she announces that this will be settled with a duel of divine beasts. Arata and Rihanna ask what's happening, to which Iluga explains that they honor their ancestors through trial and battle, and when they can't settle something, they swear an oath and fight, and the loser must give in to the winner. Hearing this, Arata asks if he will fight with Gaius for Rihanna, and Gaius nods. Suzaku looks at the crowd and asks if anyone has any objections. Iluga objects and tries to remind her that these are their guests, but Suzaku tells him not to be stingy. Rihanna turns to Arata with worry in her eyes, and he tells her to leave it to him, and she smiles, saying that she trusts him. The beastfolk form a circle around them, and Gaius says he'll take Rihanna, but Arata thinks he will never let someone like him have her. Then Phoenix announces that if Gaius wins, Rihanna will become his bride, and if Arata wins, she'll grant any wish within reason. Hearing this, Arata checks if she's serious, and she swears that she will keep her word, to which Arata thinks she's probably lived here since ancient times, so maybe she knows a way off the island. Then he glances at Rihanna and decides the best way to repay her kindness is to take her home, and for that he needs to win this duel. Suzaku raises her hand and says the fight must honor their pride and signals the start. The duel begins, and they crash into each other with brute force. Rihanna and Luna are watching anxiously, and Arata realizes Gaius is stronger than even Tiltu, but our hero is not ready to back down. He blocks the first hit and strikes back, which shocks Gaius that the human stopped his charge, while Suzaku laughs and says Arata keeps surprising her. Once again, Arata pushes forward, and the onlookers shout in awe and wonder how a human can move like this. Hearing this, Arata thinks that his body is a gift from a god, and he has never trained, but he knows he must win because he has seen how afraid Rihanna was, and he can't let that slide. He shouts that it's time to end it and drives forward with everything he's got, making Gaius drop to his knees like a bull on IV drips, and declares his win. Suzaku announces Arata as the winner while Gaius stares in disbelief. Then Arata turns to Rihanna, who's already waiting with a towel and is happy that he is okay. while Arata smiles, knowing that she was worried for him. Just then, Luna hugs him, and Aluga laughs and praises Arata, saying that Gaius may not be smart, but he's the strongest here, and Arata took him head-on. Arata's confused by the compliment until he looks at the ground and notes a straight line carved on the ground, which means he didn't dodge and just overpowered Gaius. Gaius approaches again and Arata gets ready to fight, but instead Gaius holds out his hand and says he respects him and wants to be friends. It surprises Arata, but he takes his hand and Gaius asks him to have a rematch and declares that this time he will win for sure. Hearing this, the other beasts shout that they want to fight him too and show their strength. Arata groans and says that he will fight all of them at once and tosses them around one after another like old clothes, and after some time he realizes it's already morning. He exhales and sees Riina and Luna are sleeping nearby, and Aluga and his wife are also dozing off while Suzaku is resting in her. Arata finally sits down and thinks he came to say hello, but never expected it to turn into a wild episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. The next day Arata and Riina return from the Divine Beast village, and Arata is sleeping in a hammock when Riina walks past and thinks that yesterday was tough for him. She strokes his hair and softly says he looked cool last night, and when Arata opens his eyes, she tells him that if he sleeps now, he won't be able to sleep at night. Arata gets up and admits he got a bit carried away and stretches slowly. Then, Riina asks if he's exhausted, but Arata says he feels good and didn't realize he had fallen asleep. He thinks it's been a long time since he's rested like this because in his past life, he was always busy with work, and even when he got home, he couldn't stop thinking about tomorrow. Riina smiles seeing him so relaxed, and Arata smiles too because he really is glad he ended up on this island. Riina is happy he feels that way, and Arata thinks about how at first he wanted to live alone, but now he's curious about the island and all the creatures living here. He thinks it's more fun this way, and he no longer wants a quiet and lonely life because being with others feels more fulfilling, and he hopes for more days like this. Then he promises Riina to do his best to make sure she gets home, but she looks at him in confusion. Arata asks if she doesn't want to return, and Riina says nope. Then she reminds him that he said he wanted to stay on the island, so she just assumed that she would stay there and support him. Hearing this, Arata realizes she's never once said she wanted to go home and hasn't even tried to find a way off the island, so maybe he's been worrying about it all on his own. Feeling embarrassed, he decides to find a spot to bury himself, but Riina quickly tells him to stop being ridiculous. Later that evening they sit at the table, and Arata admits that he misunderstood her and suggests that they should talk properly about what comes next, to which Riina asks why he thought she wanted to leave. Hearing this, Arata says she came here on a royal mission and got shipwrecked, so he assumed that she wanted to return. She admits that's true, but says she never told him the full story. When Arata asks about it, she begins to open up and tells him that she was an orphan until she was found by her first teacher, the first archmage among the 7 stars, who took her in and made her his apprentice. He seemed to be inspired by Monkey D. Garp because her training was just as brutal as Luffy's. She was abandoned in a monster-infested wilderness and had to survive using only magic, so she pushed herself until she collapsed from exhaustion. She tells Arata that she feels sick from even thinking about those days, but that's how she became one of the 7 archmages. Arata sees her getting quiet and asks what's wrong, to which she hesitates for a moment before admitting she never told him that she came here under direct orders from the king to search for the elixir of immortality, but it was all a trap. She reveals that after she reached the rank of Archmage, an ugly duke from her kingdom asked her to become his dedicated magician. But she refused to serve a noble because she had the power to stand on her own. However, the duke didn't see her as a magician and only saw her as a woman he wanted to possess. After she rejected him, he turned the kingdom against her and used his influence to crush her and even threatened the orphanage she grew up in. They left her with no choice, so she took advantage of a standing royal order to find the elixir of life and escaped to this island to get away from them. She knows that after the shipwreck they probably assumed she had died and let go of the orphanage, but she's exhausted from everything. Arata looks at her and thinks that she gave everything to magic, pushed herself harder than anyone, and earned her place among the strongest. But despite all that, no one saw her accomplishments but only saw her as a woman, and on this island, no one even knows what it took for her to get here, and no one will reward her efforts. He tells her it's heartbreaking that she worked so hard to become an archmage, and now it doesn't matter, to which Rihanna gives a tired smile and admits she never even wanted to be a mage and only wanted to become like the kind sisters at the orphanage. But her teacher told her that if she became a powerful mage, she could do more good for others, so she tried her best. Hearing this, Arata says that must mean she doesn't want to go back to the continent, to which Rihanna agrees and tells him not to worry because Luna and Tiltu are kind, and she's become friends with Aluga too. She declares that she wants to live a new life here instead of returning back. Arata smiles and reaches out his hand, saying that they'll live together from now on. Rihanna takes his hand, and Arata feels there's no need for words, just a quiet promise between equal friends to walk forward side by side, and he knows it means a lot to both of them. A few days later, Arata gets up and decides to go for a walk and turns to Rihanna to ask if she wants to join him. But she's already standing there with a thick book in her hand and says she wants to spend the morning reading a magic book instead. Arata recognizes the book Wilhelmina brought as an apology for laughing at them and breaking the bathhouse. But Rihanna isn't impressed because she didn't see any remorse in Wilhelmina's face. Then she says giving something precious away so easily, no matter what someone says, means something. Arata wonders what's actually inside the book, and Rihanna says it contains a type of magic that's considered mythical, and as an archmage, she's curious. Arata teases her and says how she once said she just wanted to help others and didn't want to be an archmage. Hearing this, Rihanna says this is different, to which Arata replies that if the book helps protect her, then it's worth it. After that he decides to go for a walk and steps out of the tent. Just then he feels the ground trembling and wonders if something is running. A few moments later, Egla appears from the forest and asks if they've seen Luna, to which Arata replies she had dinner with them yesterday and went home as usual and asks what's happened. Hearing this, Aluga reveals that Luna hasn't been home since yesterday, and he doesn't know where she went. Lena overhears them and comes out of the tent and asks Arata what happened, to which he tells her that Luna hasn't returned home since yesterday. Hearing this, Lena suggests they should go search for her, but Aluga says he will handle it himself and asks them to tell Luna to come home if she returns. With that, he turns and runs towards the forest while Arata and Lena are still standing. Lena then says they should look for her as well because she is not that weak to be beaten by the beasts in the forest and something might have happened to her. Arata agrees to her and says he will search for Luna while she waits here. Then he turns around and runs into the forest and looks around but finds no sign of Luna and thinks that Luna might be in trouble because she hasn't returned for a whole day. Then he recalls that she seemed cheerful as always when she visited them, and she even said she wanted to throw a party for Aluga and his wife's wedding anniversary. She told him that she would leave early to prepare a gift for them, and this made Arata think that something must have happened while Luna was preparing the gift. Just then, he feels her presence nearby and thinks that she is alright, but he's still unsure why she hasn't returned home. Arata approaches a tree and sees Luna sitting with her back to him. He calls her name, to which she turns around and looks at him with shock. He says he's glad that he found her but wants to know what she's doing, to which Luna moves away and shows a couple of wolf cubs to him. Seeing this, Arata kneels in front of Luna and asks where they came from, to which she sadly explains that she wanted to give them as a gift to Livia because Livia wanted a child. Hearing this, Arata nods and asks where their parents are, and then he gets a wild idea and asks if she has already killed them. However, Luna shouts that she didn't and reveals that when she got there, they were already dead. Hearing this, Arata tells her to calm down and explain everything to him since he doesn't blame her. She explains that after saying goodbye to Arata, she went in search of a gift for the anniversary and hoped to find a stray wolf cub, but she found these instead. She recalls that the mother of the cubs was being attacked by a bear, and she tried to drive it away and save the cubs, but the mother wolf was too wounded and died soon. Then Luna says she tried to pick up the cubs so other monsters wouldn't attack them, but the cubs didn't want to leave. She even buried the mother wolf and tried to explain to the cubs that their mother had died, but they didn't understand and refused to leave, and she was afraid they would die if left alone. Luna tells him she has been protecting them this whole time so they wouldn't be attacked. Arata pats Luna on the head and tells her she did a great job and asks what she plans to do next. Luna says she will try talking to them again once they wake up, and Arata asks if they can understand her, but Luna admits she's not sure. She explains that the cubs are blood wolves and will become very powerful when they grow up. Hearing this, Arata thinks that if the cubs become too strong, they might become dangerous and harm Lena, so it might be better to get rid of them. Just then, the cubs wake up and Arata watches one of the cubs turn toward him. The cubs then turn away and run into the forest, and Luna tells Arata that they've stopped at their mother's grave. The cubs sniff the ground and lie down on it, which Arata thinks means they already know they will never see their mother again, which means even monsters feel the pain of loss. Arata kneels beside Luna and asks if she can raise them, to which Luna confidently says that she'll teach them everything. Hearing this, Arata says they should let them say goodbye first, then take them home, and Luna nods. Just then, Aluga appears behind Arata and says he has already found Luna, to which Arata apologizes for not telling him. Hearing this, Aluga looks at Arata with Luna and the cubs sleeping on him and says he can see he couldn't leave. Aluga sits beside them and tells Arata that he can explain later. Then he asks if Luna gave him any trouble, to which Arata explains that Luna barely slept all night, so he wants to let her rest, though they shouldn't stay much longer. Aluga says it's fine because Livia won't get angry at Luna, but she will only be mad at him. Arata then praises Aluga, to which he blushes and says it is a bit uncomfortable to hear praise from another man, but his wife would erase his whole existence if a girl said these words to him. However, Arata assures him with a fake smile that Livia loves him. Just then, they note that Luna is finally awake and spreading her arms towards Aluga, to which he picks her up on his back and starts walking towards home with Arata. A week after Luna took the cubs, they named them Kur and Gar because of the different sounds they make. Arata says that they have started communicating with the beast folks and getting their help in many ways, so their lives are becoming more civilized. He comes out of his thoughts and tells Lena that they need to build a house because it might be hard for her to be in the same room with a guy all the time. However, Lena replies that she doesn't feel that way. Then she instantly realizes what he meant and says they should build a house where everyone has their own room. Hearing this, Arata explains that he plans to build 2 houses, to which Lena says they'll have to prepare a lot. The next day when Tiltu hears this, she says that it's fine if her husband is building a house where he'll live with another girl, but she also wants a room in the house. However, Arata gives her a "I'm so done with it" look, to which she scolds him for his bad attitude and explains that building a house for 2 would be like creating a love nest, and she also wants to live with him in that nest. Hearing this, Lena approaches with the house plan and says that they can add another room because the elder gave them free reign over the land and they can build a larger house. Just then, Luna shouts that she'd also like to have a room in the house and Lena agrees. A week later, Arata and Lena are standing in front of a 2-story house surrounded by a fence. Arata looks at the house and says he didn't expect it to be so easy to build, to which Lena explains that everything worked out quickly because they used magic and he was there to help reinforce everything. She then points towards the wall that they made using his earth magic and says that it's now strong enough to withstand Tiltu and Gaius blows. Hearing this, Arata says that it should be able to do that at the very least, or else it won't be able to protect them, while remembering Miss Vampire's mischievous attempts to force them into a rom-com and the massive boar that might charge into the building and destroy their house. Lena agrees and says he still did most of the work, so he should be proud of himself. Then she says they only managed to finish the outside of the house, so they still need to clean the inside. They enter the house and discuss setting up a dining table where they'll have dinner together. Arata explains that Tiltu likes to sleep higher up, so they will make her room like a loft, and underneath that is Luna's room, and the magic in the walls absorbs shocks, so it will block the sound of Tiltu's movement. Arata then looks at the neighboring doors and says they have prepared 2 spare rooms for the guests and he and Lena will live next door. Lena then says it will soon be dark, so it's better to sleep in the tent for now and arrange the furniture later. They get inside the tent and Arata thinks that tonight will be the last time they sleep there and remembers the first night when he slept there and his forever single self was so nervous being in the same tent as Lena. He gets sad when he thinks that they'll move to the new house tomorrow. Lena looks at Arata's sad face and says that they can sleep in the tent anytime if they want. Hearing this, Arata smiles and thinks that moving out of the tent cannot change their relationship because they've already become like a family. Then he says they can sleep together anytime, to which Lena nods with a blush. The next day, Arata is standing in front of the house and says they are done organizing the inside of the house. Just then the doorbell rings and when he opens it, Tiltu storms in and hugs him. Luna and Elga are also standing there and congratulate him on the new house. Just then, Suzaku appears and says she heard they built a house and decided to come and give him a prize. Hearing this, Arata says he doesn't understand why they're going to reward him. Suzaku explains to him that she promised to do anything for him when he went against Gaius in Divine Beast Wrestling. Hearing this, Arata recalls her words and thinks that back then, he wanted to help Lina return to the continent, but it became unnecessary, so he forgot about the promise. Just then, Suzaku raises her wings and says she has come up with a wonderful idea for how to reward Arata. Arata looks up and sees Suzaku in the middle of the sky and transforming her body. She turns into a whirl of flames and transforms into a phoenix. Then she waves her tail and looks at Arata with an eagle-like gaze. Seeing this, Lina says that she has never felt such mystic power from any magical beast on the continents, while Arata thinks she is the most powerful creature on the island. Suzaku then flies up to surprise Arata and says she wants to give them the right to ride on her back to look at the island from the outside. This shocks everyone while Suzaku explains that she rarely allows this, but she is offering it to Arata because he entertained her. After that, Arata and Lina get on the phoenix and Arata thinks that the bird isn't hot at all and he can feel a holy aura around it. Arata looks at his grumbling friends and asks Suzaku if she can give a ride to all of them. Hearing this, Suzaku says only Arata would say something like that because she's like a god to other people here. Arata grins mischievously and says she probably can't carry everyone, to which Suzaku agrees to give everyone a ride. However, Elga is still unsure, to which Suzaku explains that she promised Arata she would do everything for him. Hearing this, Luna sits on Phoenix's wings and everyone else also boards. Phoenix then flaps her wings and shoots into the sky at lightning speed. Arata closes his eyes in fear and tells everyone to relax, and when he opens his eyes, he gazes at the island in awe. Lina looks surprised and says the island is incredible. Arata also finds it amazing and realizes it's the first time he's seen the island from the outside, and he didn't know it was so huge and thinks there must be different races, cultures, and unknown places. Then he looks at his friend's smiling face and feels glad that he was reincarnated into this world. He calls Lina and says many more fun days are ahead and thinks he will keep living a happy life on an island full of powerful creatures. He hopes God continues to watch over him. Meanwhile, somewhere on the continent, 7 archmages gather around a round table. A mage asks if they are sure that Lina is dead, to which another mage says she is dead because her ship was caught in a storm no one could survive. The mage then says, even though she was the youngest, she was still one of them. He says the kingdom wants to use them as pawns, but they will not let it happen. Hearing this, another mage replies that losing an inexperienced girl is not a big problem, but an unfinished mission could damage their reputation, so he'll go to the island himself. He declares that he will find the faraway island and get the elixir of life. As he turns away, other mages tell him to complete the mission and not shame their name. Just then, another mage stands up and says she's worried about him going alone and offers to join. Hearing this, their leader thinks that they're more likely to succeed together and grants permission, to which the mage smirks and says it's time to head to Faraway Island. 2 weeks later, Arata opens the gate to welcome the flood of beastmen visiting from the village and thinks that many beasts often come to play and eat Lina's food since their ride on the Phoenix. Elga and Luna get worried about their decreasing portions and try to hold them back, but some of them still sneak through. However, Lina tells Arata they still have lots of boar meat, so there's no need to fight over food, to which Arata says that everyone is having fun, so it's fine. Then he reaches for a bun to taste it, but Lina smacks his hand and tells him that they're bringing the food as gifts to the village. Then she shows Arata a bowl of spices she got as gifts from divine beasts and says beastfolk spices are very different from those on the continent, and she can use these for new recipes. Hearing this, Arata tells Lina that beastfolk have something like soy sauce, which he loves as a Japanese, to which Lina asks if there are similar seasonings in his world, and Arata explains a few dishes that pair well with soy sauce. He reveals that he knows only a little about it because in his past life, he often relied on ready-made meals, to which Lina says she'll ask Livia for help. Arata thinks he is excited to taste miso soup and relax on this beautiful island. Lina then asks if people can relax in their homeland, to which Arata says they can, but not always. He explains that people don't fight there because there are no monsters, but all the modern comforts eventually make it hard to truly relax. Lina says if he means phones, she doesn't get it because being able to talk to people from far away is convenient. Hearing this, Arata says phones are useful, but knowing someone can reach you anytime makes it hard to relax, to which Lina agrees and says if her mentor could contact her anytime, she'd never get a break. Lina looks at the prepared food and says they're ready to go to the village, but wonders what they'll do next, to which Arata mentions they rarely eat fish, and Lena explains they mostly gather plants or hunt monsters, so she rarely cooks it. Arata tells her there's a river in the forest where they can catch fish to add variety. Lena agrees and suggests they go to the sea for now. As they reach the shore, Lena feels the breeze and says it's been 2 months since she met Arata. Hearing this, Arata remembers giving her CPR and thinks this is where he first found her and wonders if he hadn't met her here, his life would be very different now. Just then Lena asks if everything is okay and Arata explains that in 2 months his way of thinking has changed a lot. Hearing this, Lena says she understands he's referring to living alone in the wilderness and explains that after spending every day together, she's starting to understand him better. Then she says they need to figure out how to catch fish, and Arata suggests they start by making a fishing rod. Just then they notice people lying on the shore and Arata rushes to the man and checks that he is alive. Then he tells Lena to help the woman and starts blowing air into the man's mouth, and the man starts coughing up water. Seeing this, Arata says the man is okay and asks Lena about the woman's condition. Lena charges her lightning magic and directs it at the woman. Arata's brain fuses when he sees this and asks what she's doing. Lena explains she's performing CPR and Arata shouts that her method could kill the girl. Hearing this, Lena says that this type of resuscitation is normal for reviving wizards, though the success rate is low, but it's still the usual method. Arata shouts at her to stop and says that the girl is already dead, but Lena says she is alive, and just then the girl spits water and stirs a bit. Lena looks down at them, and she would have been okay with them just dying here, to which Arata asks if they are her comrades. Lena nods and adds that she'd prefer never to meet them again. Then she looks at the guy and explains that he is Zelos, grinder of destructive flames, and the girl is Merlin, who has water magic. She says they are ranked 6th and 5th among the archmages and of a higher rank than her. After that, they take both of them to their house and Arata is glad that they made a guest room where they can make them stay. Lena then tells Arata that they are higher ranked than her and have been practicing magic for over 20 years. Hearing this, Arata looks at her in surprise and says the magicians don't look old at all, to which Lena explains that powerful mages can control their age through magic, and she is sure that both of them are over 50. Arata's eyes widen in shock, while Lena says she joined as a newcomer. But no one welcomed her, and there was no real camaraderie in the group. She reveals that everyone only cared about raising their own rank, and because of that, she never felt any attachment to them. She says if she were stronger, maybe none of this would matter, to which Arata tells her that it doesn't matter here anymore because no one on this island knows about 7 great mages, and she's just Lena here. Just then they hear a sound and step inside the room to check on the mages. Arata asks them about their well-being, to which they look uneasy and glare at him. Arata understands their reaction and thinks he'd be just as cautious if he were in their place. Just then Merlin glances at Lena and is surprised to see her alive. After that, they sit at the table and Arata asks them to introduce themselves. Merlin bows to him and thanks him for saving her. Zelos also bows reluctantly and thanks them. Seeing this, Arata wonders if they're really as bad as Lena described. Zelos and Merlin then explain that they use fire and water magic, and they currently hold the 6th and 5th ranks among the Archmage stars. Then Arata tells them he got stranded on this island around 2 months ago and has been living here ever since, and then he points at Lena and says she probably doesn't need any introductions. Zelos nods and admits they had been sure Lena had already kicked the bucket. Just then, Merlin asks what island they're on and Arata imagines the strange creatures that live here and gets up thinking that even if he explained everything, they probably wouldn't believe him. He tells Lena to explain it all and says he needs to step out for a bit. As Arata leaves, he looks up and sees a dragon flying overhead, and just then Tiltu transforms into her human form and clings to him like a leech. She sniffs his body and shouts that he smells like another woman. Arata sees the anger in her eyes and explains everything. Hearing this, Tiltu says the island is sealed with a divine barrier created by God, so visitors from the outside are extremely rare and adds that even Arata's arrival is already a major event. She says that never before in the island's long history have so many outsiders appeared at once and guesses that something must be happening to the barrier. Arata recalls that Elga has already told him about this. Tiltu says even they can't go against the power of a god, and Arata thinks about the island again and realizes they might be talking about different gods entirely. He also knows that powerful beings are locked within the island, so the barrier around it must be incredibly strong, and if a flaw appears in that barrier, only a god could repair it. Then he asks Tiltu if it's that bad if the barrier is breaking, and Tiltu replies that it's not all terrible because they never cared much for the outside world, and she doubts many creatures would want to leave to destroy the outside world. Arata knows that some might still try to cause trouble, but if things go out of control, he'll try to stop them. Then he says there's no point in worrying about the barrier for now and it's time to go home and eat. Tiltu agrees with him and Arata walks over to the magicians and asks if they're done talking. Zelos is about to speak when he looks at Tiltu on Arata's back and quickly takes up a defensive stance. Arata sees them shaking in fear and hears them ask what kind of monster he's carrying. Zelos says that the beast they fought is like a baby compared to this one and she has terrifying magical power. Arata assures them she is not that dangerous, but Tiltu unfolds her dragon wings and begins releasing dark energy. The magicians' hearts hit 404 real quick when they feel her evil and overwhelming power. Arata asks Tiltu what she's doing, to which she says that people are finally starting to fear and respect her. Arata glances at the frightened magicians, then turns to Tiltu and says he can't stand girls who act like that. Hearing this, Tiltu suddenly takes a U-turn, shakes hands with the magicians, and welcomes them to the island. She assures Arata that she will get along with the magicians just fine. Arata smiles at Tiltu and tells her that since they're Lena's acquaintances, she should be friendly with them. Merlin is still tense as she watches Arata hugging the dragon and turns to Lena and says she has never seen anything like this before. Hearing this, Lena explains that she tried to tell them about the island, but they didn't believe her. Zelos points at Arata and says no one in their right mind would believe such a story. Arata then asks what they plan to do next and Zelos explains that they plan to build a base and explore the island gradually. Merlin says if the island is really that dangerous, they will need to be cautious. Arata suggests that they should help them, and Lena says they have a small tent she can give them. She also says she will provide a small amount of food, but after that, they'll need to learn how to survive on their own. Hearing this, the magicians bow and thank her, to which Lena says she won't be able to sleep knowing her friends might die out there, but that's all she can do. After they have gone, Arata notes that the magicians have decided to settle further away, and Lena explains it's because they feel uncomfortable because she showed them mercy even though she's ranked lower. Arata tells her to take it easy and says that at least they have new neighbors now. Lena sighs and says only Arata could treat high-ranking magicians so casually, and she remembers how he said no one knows who she is. Then she smiles that her title of Heavenly Great Mage doesn't matter on this island. Just then, Tiltu says they should go hunting and Lena replies that if they bring good ingredients, she'll cook something delicious. Tiltu laughs and says they won't disappoint her, and Lena wishes them luck as she watches them go. Then she heads to the house and says she'll start dinner preparations. That night, Arata tells Lena that he didn't sense new guests while hunting in the forest and wonders where they went. Lena replies that after she gave them the tents, they headed toward the river and this shocks Arata because the river floods when it rains. However, Lena says they'll be fine since Merlin is the best water mage on the continent. She reveals that the magicians understand how dangerous the island is, and that is why they chose a place where they can do their best. She says only one person she knows could defeat Merlin on the shoreline. Then she looks at Arata and says he's the only one who could beat her because his power goes beyond reason. After that, she leaves to take a bath and Arata thinks Lena might be an incredible mage, but she believes they're stronger than her. He thinks he doesn't know what the future holds, but hopes he can become friends with the new guests. Just then, Will appears in the sky and says they'll have fun again. She stands on the wall and Arata notes her strange outfit and asks why she came at such a late hour. Will replies that only he and Luna talk to her like that and asks why he built this strange wall. Arata tells her that it was a necessary barrier to stop monsters like her from attacking the bathhouse while someone was inside. However, Will says she already found a way in and Arata says she did since she can fly. But he won't let her destroy the house or wall. The vampire smirks and creates a magic stone and says she'll give it a try. Then she enlarges the stone and points it at the wall. Arata watches as the flying stone crashes and shatters without doing any harm. Seeing this, our Riz god smiles proudly and thinks it was worth it to pour so much magic into the wall. He grins at the annoyed Will as she asks how much magic it took to make it that strong. Arata notes that Will is only interested in Lena and realizes that Will always appears at the moment when Lena is taking a bath. Then he asks Will if she is using a wiretap spell, to which she says she doesn't know what he means, but she uses farsight magic. She explains that she only comes to embarrass her, and normally she would have just destroyed the bathroom wall without hesitation. Then she tells the surprised Arata that she recently sensed new people arriving on the island and asks if anyone from their race has shown up. Arata admires her sharp observation, while Will explains that strange things started happening to the island's barrier before they arrived. She says she felt a disturbance recently, so she decided to visit, and Arata thinks she might actually be worried about them. However, Will says she wants to hear everything and wickedly mentions that she now has new toys. Hearing this, Arata realizes she's up to something weird again, to which she whispers she is getting interesting ideas. Arata asks her not to cause trouble, to which Will carelessly says it's not her problem. Arata thinks back to when they first met and realizes that Will doesn't believe it's wrong to embarrass others because her worldview is different from humans, and he admits that he accepts that part of her. Will then says that they might seem similar, but they're different, and explains that each species has its way of life. She says it's a mistake to assume they can truly understand each other. Hearing this, he thinks she might be right because even humans have greatly different thoughts and beliefs, and if they are from different races or live in different regions, the differences grow even more. And those who live on this island are far more individualistic than humans, and the island is full of self-willed beings. Then he smiles and says they can still get along, and Will agrees and says it's possible because they share a common language and they're able to feel compassion for each other. Then she holds out her hand to Arata and says that even if they're from different races, they can still be friends. She gets closer to Arata and says Lena should be done with her bath, and poor Arata thinks he forgets who he's talking to because Will always turns things to justify messing with others. Will smirks and tells him not to pretend and says he can sense what's going on in the bathroom if he focuses. Arata imagines Lena naked and hears Will say that he could even see her getting dressed in his mind. She adds that it's a normal reaction for a guy, and embarrassed Arata stands up and angrily says he would never do that. Just then, Lena walks out of the bathroom and sees the trembling Arata and accuses him of possibly doing something like that. She angrily asks if he really could, but Arata shakes with panic and says he might have the ability but would never use it. However, our not-so-innocent dude imagines Lena in different poses and blushes harder, and Will teases him more by saying that no guy could stay rational when a naked girl is nearby. Arata yells at her to shut up and notices that she has already vanished. Lena then calls Arata and says she'd like to have a talk with him. Hearing this, Arata lowers his head and thinks the night is going to be long. The next day, Arata apologizes to Lena for what happened, but she reassures him that it's okay and says that if he had wanted to do something like that, he would have done it a long time ago. Hearing this, Arata feels grateful that she trusts him. Lena then remembers when Arata asked her to build a house with separate rooms and admits she has something embarrassing to share. She explains that if he didn't live nearby, she's not sure she could survive on the island because her barrier isn't strong enough against monsters, so it's never enough to sleep soundly. She adds that the monsters keep their distance if Arata is with her. Arata looks at her and thinks the monsters understand the difference in strength, so they have stopped coming near him like they did during his initial days. He sadly thinks that Lena might think of him as a mosquito coil and not think of him as a man. He clenches his fists and thinks that if his presence helps her get enough sleep, then he is glad to calm her down with this. Then he admits Lena has taken good care of him all this time, and that's why he will stay with her, to which Lena thanks him. After that, Arata comes out for a walk and thinks the monsters remember his smell, so they will not approach their house. He continues walking forward and thinks he should walk through the forest to show the monsters that this is his territory. As he approaches the river, he thinks about Merlin and Zelos because Lena told him that they set up their camp by the river. He decides to check on the guests because they arrived on the island only yesterday. He walks through the forest and guesses that they might be nearby because the forest is not very dense. As he approaches the river, he sees a water monster created by Merlin. Then he notes angry Merlin and Zelos standing in a fighting stance. However, Arata still doesn't understand what is happening and asks Elga about the situation. Elga explains that they were going to visit Arata as usual, but Luna smelled an unfamiliar scent and ran toward it, which is why they ended up in this situation. Hearing this, Arata thinks Zelos and Merlin might have thought that Luna wanted to attack them. Then he asks Luna and Elga if they did anything to them, to which they reply that they did not touch them at all. Arata then turns to the magicians and assures them that they are not dangerous at all. However, Zelos replies he cannot believe there is no threat because they are giving off an insane amount of magical power. Just then Arata looks at the cloud above him and sees a huge rooster flying over their heads. Zelos looks at the bird in horror and asks who it is, while Merlin says the monsters here look more ferocious than the Hellfire dragon they defeated on the continent. Arata points at the bird and asks Luna about it, and she tells him that it is a Shantak bird. Hearing this, Arata thinks that if Luna is happy, then it means the bird has very tasty meat. The rooster looks furiously at Arata and the divine beasts and notes that their danger level is higher than that of humans, so it flies toward the less dangerous magicians and attacks them. Seeing this, they shout that they rank 5th and 6th among the stars of the Archmage family, so do not underestimate them. Arata watches them and thinks that Luna is the same, so she always calls her name when she fights. He runs toward the frightened magicians and shouts that he cannot just watch them being attacked. Just then Luna jumps and shouts that she is catching meat. Then she lands on the rooster's back and pushes him to the ground. Arata sees the rooster lying on the ground and realizes that Luna has already defeated him. The magicians watch the defeated bird in surprise, as they did not expect the beastmen to help them. Arata approaches the magicians and asks if they are okay, to which they nod and thank him. Then he notices their tired faces, he remembers Luna's symptoms, and he realizes that they are sick from Luna's magic power. Arata kneels in front of them and says he will monitor the surroundings while they rest in the tent, and both of them thank him again. Arata turns to Elga, who asks if everything is okay with them. Arata tells him that Lena previously also experienced problems due to strong magical energy, but with time they will be able to get used to it. Elga replies that they will try to be more careful, but if they are so weak, then they need protection. However, he does not care what happens to them and says that if Arata still decides to take responsibility for them, they will help him. Hearing this, Arata thanks him and suggests they could go fishing since they are already at the river, to which Elga agrees. After that, Arata casts his fishing rod and enjoys the natural scenery around him. Just then he hears Elga and Luna saying that they are not catching anything, so he tells them to relax and wait for a bit. However, Luna is not happy with this and says this game is too boring. Hearing this, Arata uses his senses and feels the fish swimming to the shore. Then he points his finger at a part where he sensed the fish. Hearing this, Elga and Luna get excited and move there to catch the fish. Arata casts his fishing rod and feels that he's caught something big. Then he pulls hard and throws the rod behind him. But as he hears a loud splash behind him, he turns around in fear and realizes that's not the sound of a river fish. He approaches the catch and his eyes widen in shock when he sees it isn't a fish and it's someone who looks like an elf. Sometime later, we see Arata kneeling in front of Lena as she asks why he came back with a girl when he was just going out for a walk. Arata looks down and explains that he was just relaxing and fishing, but somehow this happened. Hearing this, Lena sighs and says she'll think about the girl later because now it's time to cook dinner. Arata agrees with her and recalls that they got some fresh meat from hunting the rooster. However, Luna says she hasn't shown it to Tiltu yet, so they can't eat it until she gets permission. After that, they can all cook it together. Lena then looks at the buckets of fish and says they will make their main dish of the day from fish. Hearing this, Luna gets upset and asks if they're really going to eat them, to which Lena nods. Arata notices Luna's sad expression and guesses she's become attached to one of the fish and thinks this might help her understand the value of life. However, he quickly rethinks his words when he sees her drooling at the fish later. While Elga is sitting beside the unconscious girl, Arata enters and asks if she's okay. He tells Arata that she's just sleeping and says he can guess by her appearance that she is an Alpha. He explains that Alphas look similar to elves, but they are a different race with darker skin and a different culture. He reveals that elves live in the mountains, while Alpha live in the forests. He tells Arata that Alphas worship spirits of darkness, fire, and earth, while elves worship spirits of light, water, and wind. Egla then says it's not that the spirits hate each other, or that the races are enemies, but there's an issue. He explains that divine beast tribes, like his own, get along well with elves but not as much with Alphas. Then he reveals that the reason their chief is Phoenix is because long ago there was a debate over her flame and the flame of the great spirit of fire they worship, and ever since then, Alpha has always treated them like enemies, but that was a millennium ago. Suddenly, the girl on the bed opens her eyes and asks where she is. Arata calmly tells her she's in their house, and the girl instantly says she's hungry. A bit later, we see the girl devouring the fish like she is in a mukbang competition, and it makes Luna upset, but she accepts it as a challenge and starts eating too. Elga is afraid that they will eat his potion too. Lena then asks Arata about the girl, and he tells her the new girl's name is Kadama, and that she came from the northern mountains where her tribe lives. Hearing this, Lena asks how a mountain girl ended up in a river. Arata explains that she was hungry and tried to catch fish, but her leg cramped and she got stuck. Lena shakes her head and calls the girl clumsy. Luna and Kadama collapse to the ground with full bellies, and Lena scolds them for lying right after eating and says it's bad manners. The girls say they're full and just want to sleep, and Arata suggests Kadama stay the night since it's already late. Hearing this, Luna also says she wants to stay, and Arata carries both girls to their room. Seeing this, Lena says he is looking like their dad, to which Arata says that makes her their mother. Lena blushes at his words and imagines them as a little family, while Arata just thinks of it as a joke. Seeing their D-grade romantic comedy, Elga gets annoyed and tells Arata to take the girls to their room because they are about to pass out. Arata carries the girls upstairs and tucks them into bed. Later, he steps out and finds Lena frying more fish and asks where these fish came from. Elga shows him a hidden bucket and says he hid the ones he caught. Lena serves the fish and says she made a more adult dish this time and asks for their opinion. Elga praises its smell, and Lena gently tells him not to shout since the girls are sleeping. While Arata stares at the food and says it would go well with wine, Lena surprises them by taking out a bottle and holding up glasses. Seeing this, Arata asks if she's been hiding wine, and Lena explains that she saved it for a special occasion because there was just a little left. They raise their glasses and Arata takes a sip and thinks the wine is easy to drink and refreshing. Elga shakes with pleasure and thinks the food is amazing, and Arata knows that he is desperately holding back from screaming. Lena raises the glass to her lips and drinks its contents, and Arata blushes as he looks at her. Seeing both of them lost in each other, Elga passes a teasing comment. However, Lena ignores it and tells Arata to look up at the sky. He looks up at the starry sky and says he likes noisy feasts, but it's nice to have quiet evenings like these. The next day, Arata stretches out in the morning and sees that Kadama is also there and asks why she got up early. She tells him she likes sunbathing in the morning and thanks Arata for saving her. Arata says it's fine, to which she tells him that an Alfer never forgets the kindness of others, and then she apologizes for eating the tons of fish he caught. Hearing this, Arata smiles and says next time she can bring something for Luna because she is the one who caught most of the fish. Kadama says she will repay her in full, but also wants to help him with something because he saved her. Hearing this, Arata asks if they really live in the mountains, and Kadama explains that many spirits of fire, earth, and darkness live there, so they feel very comfortable. Arata asks if they can get any delicious food there, to which she says the mountains have plenty of food since they are the source of life. Arata says he would like to take some with him when they visit the mountains, and Kadama replies she will tell the elder. And because her people owe him, the Great Spirit will definitely welcome him. Just then, Lena and Luna appear, and Lena asks what they were talking about. Arata tells them the essence of their conversation, and Lena says she has some ingredients left, but could use more vegetables. Kadama replies that the mountains have many gifts of nature, and that they also grow some plants themselves. Lena and Kadama then start discussing the ingredients, and Arata thinks that they will talk for a while, so he decides to go to wash at the river. Hearing this, Luna says she wants to go with him, and both of them start walking towards the forest. As they approach the river, they see Zelos there practicing with fire. Arata and Luna wish him good morning, but Luna notices that Zelos is not happy with her presence, and she asks why he is looking at her like that. Seeing this, Arata thinks that Luna is suppressing her magic, but Zelos can realize the strength difference, and he is still afraid of Luna and the other island's inhabitants. Arata thinks that he is a stranger on this island, so he wants everyone to get along. Then he says to Luna that Zelos is not yet used to the island, so she should be careful showing her power. Zelos apologizes to Arata, to which he replies that he understands it will take time to get used to the island. Arata realizes that Merlin and Zelos seem even more cautious than Lena. However, he does not want them to be afraid of his friends forever, and thinks that if a situation like yesterday repeats constantly, they might develop psychological issues. He thinks that even though they met only recently, he does not want things to end badly and asks if they have time after this. Zelos replies that they don't have much to do in the mornings, to which Arata invites him to have breakfast with them. Later, Arata enters the house and asks Lena if they have talked enough. Lena says they discussed a lot and also got many vegetables, so she is already looking forward to visiting Alphas. Just then, Lena spots Merlin and Zelos behind Arata and asks why they are here. Arata explains the situation to her and says he thought it would be nice for them all to have breakfast together. Arata looks at Lena and recalls that Lena wasn't on good terms with the heavenly mages. However, he thought that they were not enemies, so maybe things could be resolved over a meal. Lena notes his sad expressions and says that if he wants, then she doesn't mind having breakfast together. Then she adds that she still has her thoughts on this. Hearing this, Arata says they all live on the same island, so it's better to get along. Lena agrees with him and says they're no longer in the kingdom or on the continent. Then she offers her hand and tells the uneasy mages that while the island can feel like hell sometimes, it's actually a good place to live, so it's better to let go of the past and try getting along. Zelos takes Lena's hand and apologizes for everything that happened, saying he wants to start over. He turns to Merlin and tells her she should also pull herself together and talk, to which Merlin nods and says she never thought something like this could happen after reaching the level of 7th Archmage. Then she shakes hands with Lena and says she too wants to start fresh. Arata thanks Zelos for coming over, to which he says they should speak more casually. Just then, Luna asks Zelos if he's still afraid of her, and Zelos says he's not afraid anymore and thanks her for saving them. Hearing this, Luna says she wants to be friends and calls him uncle. Zelos gets shocked and asks why she calls him that, and Luna replies that he really is like an uncle. Zelos admits he is pretty old, and hearing this, Merlin and Lena start laughing. Then he points at Merlin and asks Luna what she'll call her, to which Luna says she's her aunt. Hearing this, Merlin yells that Zelos knew she would say that. Arata and Lena are happy to see that they have become friends. Just then, mukbang girl Kadama says she's hungry, and Arata remembers that they still haven't had breakfast. Lena suggests they should eat, and all of them walk towards the table. Arata calls Zelos and Merlin too, and all of them sit in the dining area. Arata looks at them and thinks he has no idea how they'll survive on this island. He thinks they might come up with an escape plan and decides to help them if they want to leave, because this is a free island where they can live however they want and have constant fun. He knows that they will meet many others and a lot of strange things will happen. Arata thinks he wants to enjoy this island life for as long as possible. After breakfast, Arata says it's always noisy, but he feels lonely when no one is around. Lena tells him that if they always have such loud breakfasts, she'll get tired quickly. She says she never thought it would turn out like this, since they only used to see magicians at meetings and rarely spoke. Arata recalls that she told him that the magicians chose to live far away out of pride and because they didn't get along. Then he says they've resolved their differences so they can now live closer. And then he asks Lena if they can live nearby until they get used to the island. Hearing this, Lena says having them close can be useful in daily life and explains that Zelos, who controls fire, can help her cook meat. Arata looks at her and thinks cooking meat doesn't suit someone with such a grand title. Lena continues and says Merlin, who uses water magic, can help with laundry and cleaning because water is helpful for chores. Hearing this, Arata wonders if it will be okay to ask them to help with these casual things and thinks that their proud titles don't mean much here, and raising their quality of life is more important. Lena then says she is leaving Arata in charge of them and suggests they should tell them right away. Then both of them head out and welcome Zelos and Merlin. Zelos says they hope to rely on their support and asks them to decide where to set up the tents. Arata helps them set their tents and then returns to the house. Both Merlin and Lena head to the bath, and Merlin says she didn't expect to enjoy an outdoor bath like this on the island. Lena tells her that they built another bathroom separate from the one in the house and recalls that the first time it was destroyed was by a vampire. Meanwhile, Arata tells Zelos they will have to handle fire and water supply, to which Zelos asks if their grand titles are just a joke to him. Arata says that for him, those titles mean nothing, and Zelos responds that they are really just trying to survive on the island and would be grateful for any role offered. Arata asks what they were planning to do if they hadn't been invited. Zelos answers they would try to find a way to survive, and they also have to find a way back to the continent. Hearing this, Arata thinks only he and Lena have chosen to stay on the island and feels that Zelos wants to leave as soon as possible. Then he tells Zelos that even Elga does not know how to leave the island, but Zelos gets scared as he hears about Elga. Arata assures him that Elga is a good guy who is always ready to help. Zelos looks at Arata and says normal people fear dangerous creatures, but he is different, to which Arata replies that he has truly never been afraid of anyone on the island. Then he admits that Will and Suzako are the only ones he fears because they felt different from others. He explains that they are not bad and they just like to tease people. Just then Will appears and says only someone monstrously strange could say that. Zelos stares at the vampire in fear and falls to the ground. While Will asks Arata with anger why he is blocking her path to the bathhouse, and Arata replies that he is trying to stop her from destroying it again. He tells her to stop visiting while Lena is taking a bath. Hearing this, Will teases Arata and asks if he doesn't want to see the embarrassed face of Lena. She smirks and says he needs to get out of her way so he can enjoy the full view. However, Arata sternly says he will not fall for her tricks. Just then, Will notices scared Zelos and introduces herself as a pureblood vampire who rules the Dark Nights. Zelos is about to piss in his pants as he says he is the 6th of the 7 Archmages. Hearing this, Will says to Arata that normal people fear her, but Arata replies that he is not afraid of her anyway. He explains that sometimes she annoys him a little, but he still considers her a friend he can talk to. Hearing this, Will admits that it's nice to have someone to talk to. Arata notes her expressions and says she must be embarrassed, to which she gets angry and attacks Arata with a ball of flame, but Arata instantly throws it away. Seeing this, Zelos asks if he is okay, to which Arata replies that this is common for him. Will then looks at Arata and says that he is even worse than a monster. Then she points at Zelos and welcomes him to the island and gives a mushroom to him. She says she came to have fun and didn't bring a big gift. But this is the most delicious mushroom on the island, and she is giving him as a token of friendship. Arata instantly snatches the mushroom from his hand and says he won't let her give this mushroom because he knows what it is for. Arata remembers his walk with Elga when he told him about different edible stuff in the forest. When Arata asked about the mushrooms, Elga told him that they were edible but should only be eaten on special occasions. Then he shyly admits that the mushroom increases desire. Then he asks if Will visited him and reveals that Will once fed him a similar mushroom, and he doesn't want to remember how it ended. He says that the old vampire is ready to do anything for fun, so he must be careful. Arata comes out of his thoughts and asks if that is a wanna-bang mushroom. Will nods and asks how he knows about this mushroom, to which Arata replies that Aluga told him. Will gets displeased and says his friend is ungrateful because only thanks to her does he has a happy family life. Arata replies that Elga is angry because she made him skip all the steps to happiness and turned him into an animal. Then he says Elga couldn't understand for a long time that Libya was in love with him, so it is impossible to say he has no problems at all. Will then asks Arata about his feelings for Lena and seizes the opportunity of his distraction and attacks the bathhouse. Lena comes out and asks why she always comes at such times and tries to say strange things, to which Will replies that she enjoys watching her get embarrassed. Lena points her finger at Will and warns her to stop before she feeds her something more tasty. Will gets away from her reach and says her food looks delicious, but her embarrassment is much tastier. Then she flies away and says she will come to play another night, so she must wait for her. After she is gone, Zelos asks Arata if everyone on the island is like her, to which Arata explains the vampire belongs to a special category, although he is not sure if there are no others like her on the island. Hearing this, Zelos says he has no confidence in surviving on this island without Arata. However, Arata is a bit sad on hearing these words from a guy. A week after Zelos and Marlin begin living near Arata and Lena, they realize that staying in a tent is too inconvenient. So Arata and Lena help them build a proper house. Luna and Elga arrive at the perfect time to celebrate the completion, and everyone ends up having a great time together. That evening, Arata mentions that their standard of living has improved with the help of Merlin and Zelos. Then he asks Lena if she also has a nickname like Merlin and Zelos, to which Lena tells him that she used to be called Thousand Spells. Arata praises her title, while Lena explains that she doesn't have any special talents, so her skills are mostly helpful for daily life. Hearing this, Arata explains that on this island, they don't need brute force to win and her magic is more valuable because it improves their daily life. Arata recalls that Zelos told him that he can't use storage magic, but Lena knows many types of spells, which is why she got the nickname Thousand Spells. Lena blushes and thanks him, while Arata thinks that he couldn't live comfortably without her and remembers the delicious dinner she made. Then he says that he hasn't seen Tiltu for a while, to which Lena remembers that Will has also stopped coming in the evenings. Arata thinks that the two used to come by almost every day, but now they've suddenly stopped. Though Tiltu is probably fine, but Will's absence feels suspicious. Hearing this, Lena suggests that maybe they're planning something strange, but Arata tells her that they don't know each other. The next day, Arata opens the door and sees Will standing in front of them like a danger sign. Seeing this, Lena suggests Arata should throw her far away and Arata replies that he could do it, but she will just come back later. Will hears everything and says she came all this way to play with them. Arata says she's acting suspicious and also points out that she rarely shows up during the day. Will smirks and asks where Luna and the others are, to which Arata replies that they haven't arrived yet, and Will says that's even better. She says that whatever she's planning would be too much for children. Just then they hear a roar and Arata grabs Lena and jumps, saying they need to leave. A furious dragon flies up toward the house and seeing this Lena hugs Arata and says it looks like Tiltu. Arata recognizes Tiltu but feels that something seems off, while Lena guesses that Will must have done something to her. Arata jumps down and tells Lena to move away while he handles things. Lena tells him not to get injured and runs away. Arata stares at the dragon flying toward him and tells her to calm down. Hearing this, the dragon suddenly changes shape and crashes into him and hugs him. Arata strokes her head as he looks at the damaged forest, thinking that she doesn't seem to have any violent intent. He knows she just wants to be pampered, even if she's acting oddly. Lena comes up and asks if Arata is okay. He says everything's fine and carries Tiltu home in his arms and thinks she's behaving strangely, but he will have to ask Will about it. They enter the house and see Will sitting at the table and saying they handled it faster than she expected. Arata then sees that she is cooking something and asks what she's doing. Will replies that her friends always entertain her, so she decided to thank them with a special dish and there's nothing suspicious in that. Will insists they shouldn't refuse food that she made herself, but Arata asks that first she should explain what she did to Tiltu. Will smiles and says she just helped Tiltu become a bit more honest and used a method called magic eyes on her. Hearing this, Arata says he doesn't feel any strange effect, to which Will calls him boring and adds that there are different types of magic eyes and the one she used stimulates instincts. Arata realizes what must have happened and Lena asks when Tiltu will return to normal. Will replies that maybe she'll feel better after they try her dish and Arata looks nervously at the soup and asks if she seriously expects him to eat it. Will says that if he doesn't, she'll make Lena eat it instead. Arata sits at the table and takes a sip and thinks that the soup's taste reminds him of nature and makes him feel warmth and nostalgia, like being home. Will notes his expression and says he liked her soup and Arata admits that the soup is tasty and harmless. Lena decides to trust Will and tastes the soup and feels that it's delicious. Will says they can eat as much as they want because she's already full, so she won't be eating anymore. Then she gives an evil grin and whispers she wants to save room for dessert. After eating the soup, Arata and Tiltu lie down for a nap while Lena starts reading. Seeing this, Love Guru Will gets upset and says they should do something more interesting than sleep, especially when a young guy and a girl live together. She suggests they should play some adult games, to which Arata instantly says he doesn't do such things. However, Will once again smirks and says he won't be able to say it anymore and Arata shouts at her to ask what she is planning. Then he feels that Tiltu is hugging him tightly and her voice is so high. Seeing this, he asks Will if she has done anything to her, but Will carelessly says she just served her food. Suddenly Lena approaches and hugs him tightly and says his name in a high voice. Both Tiltu and Lena are hugging him, and he turns bright red and tries to break free from their embrace. He tells them to stop and asks Will what she did. Will replies casually that she only fed them soup and it was nothing unusual. Then she shows him a bottle and says she just added a bit of alcohol, the kind used in normal cooking. Arata glares at her and asks if she really used a regular drink, to which she explains that it was a blood wine filled with her magic. Arata, trapped in the arms of the girls, asks what would happen if they drank it, and Will replies that a large dose makes one go crazy, but if a small amount is used in cooking, most people just get drunk. Arata blushes and looks at the girls telling him to pat their heads. He puts his hands on their heads and thinks Tiltu is always sweet, but Lena has that cold, elegant beauty and this new version of her is incredibly cute. Just then Lena leans toward his ear and gently says his name, which makes him almost lose his sanity. Arata instantly gets away from both of them and tells Will to take care of the mess she created. Will smiles maliciously as she watches Arata run off and thinks that even though he ran away, she has already seen enough. She watches Arata jump over the fence and says she's thankful for the treat. Meanwhile, Arata is sitting near the river after running away from crazy Lena and Tiltu. He says he shouldn't have trusted Will and imagines Lena touching him. However, he stops himself and splashes river water on himself and says he liked it but needs to focus on something else. He sits quietly and realizes that he hasn't been alone with himself in a long time and thinks he lives with Lena while Tiltu and Luna visit him every day. He reflects that he wanted to live alone, but now he doesn't feel good without any of them and feels that something inside him might have changed. He gets up and says it's too early to go home, so he decides to take a walk. Suddenly, the ground under his feet starts glowing and blinds him, forcing him to cover his eyes. When the light fades, he opens his eyes and gets shocked when he sees a destroyed castle in front of him and a dragon standing nearby. A guy approaches and asks who he is, and Arata turns his head and asks what's going on. Just then, the dragon starts growling and approaching him, and the guy shouts at Arata to run away. Arata stands there and thinks that the dragon is strong but looks harmless compared to Suzaku and Will, and even weaker than the Boar Emperor. Just then, a girl falls in front of Arata and apologizes and explains that she dragged him here because she used a divine spell to open the gate to another world to summon the most powerful divine beast, but her plan has failed. The guy named Ark tells the upset Ceres that she shouldn't call herself a saint. Ceres apologizes and says the summoning was the only way to fight the apocalyptic dragon. Another girl, Ellie, walks up to them and says she is to blame too because she wasn't strong enough. Arata listens as the witch says she's not worthy of her title. Looking at their serious faces, he thinks they are humans with powerful roles like hero, saint, and witch. He stares at the dragon and thinks it's the apocalyptic dragon and notes that it is frightened. Ark points at the monster and says it's the terrifying apocalyptic dragon, and the books of the church describe it as the embodiment of great evil that will destroy the world. Ellie says the only way to defeat it is to sacrifice her life. Arata walks closer to the dragon and thinks they must have summoned him as their last hope, but to them, he looks like just a regular guy, so they don't take him seriously. He wonders if there's a way to return to the island. Just then Ark says to him that they'll cover him and he should run and not look back even if he hears screams. Ceres prays for his life while Ellie says they will try to buy some time so he can stay alive. Arata walks toward the dragon and thinks he cannot leave because they are good people. Ark watches him approach the dragon and asks where he is going and warns that it's dangerous near the monster. Arata moves closer to the dragon and sees its surprised expression. Then the dragon opens its mouth and shoots flames from its jaws. Heroes see it with shock and blame themselves for being too weak to help, while Ellie scolds them and says there is no point in self-blame and they should focus on the enemy. However, Arata is standing there with his "I'm so over it" face, and the warriors look at him in disbelief as he calmly stretches his hands toward the dragon and lifts his fist to attack. The dragon shakes its head, and Arata thinks he imagined it since there's no way the dragon can understand him. Then he punches the beast with full force and launches it into the sky. The heroes stare with wide eyes as the dragon crashes back to the ground and lies still. Arata looks at the corpse and declares his victory. Then he tells them to return him to his world, and he notices a radiant light at his feet and raises his head when Ceres asks if Arata is a god. Arata says he is just an ordinary person, and as he begins to vanish, Ceres quickly asks for his name. Arata tells her his name and Ceres says she will tell the church and future generations about his great feat. However, Arata says it wasn't anything grand, just a small help, but Ceres insists she will spread the story of the divine messenger, and they are all deeply grateful. After that, Arata opens his eyes and finds himself in a forest on the island. He looks around and thinks he has returned to the same place he was taken from. He wonders if it was all a dream and thinks Lena and Tiltu must have calmed down by now, so it's time to go back. Sometime later, he opens a door and sees Lena sitting on the couch, and she blushes when she sees him. Will greets him and Arata thanks her for looking after his friends. Just then, Teltu runs up and hugs him and says she's glad he's back, while Lena blushes again and says she is also happy to see him home. Arata is relieved to see her smiling again and realizes he was more worried about her than he thought. Will sees Tiltu hugging Arata and says they need to go back, but Tiltu replies that she will sleep with Arata tonight. Will uses shadow magic to snatch Teltu away and says that wouldn't be fun. Tiltu insists that she wants to be pampered by Arata tonight, but Will drags her to the door and wishes everyone a fun night. After they leave, Arata feels a little embarrassed because it's been a while since they were alone. Lena then says she wants to talk about what happened today, but Arata says so much happened that they should just rest because no one will remember it tomorrow anyway. He looks at her and thinks that maybe it's not the right time to develop their relationship. Lena approaches him and says that the next day hasn't come yet, so tonight doesn't have to be like every other night. She hugs him and says it's not the alcohol from dinner that made her want to be close to him. She presses her head to his shoulder and says that tomorrow she'll go back to being normal, so for tonight, she wants him to spoil her a little. Her words make our Sigma boy's heart skip a beat and he hugs her. Meanwhile, in the cathedral, the group of heroes is standing before the priest, who accuses Ceres of summoning the devil even though she was once a saint. He strikes the ground with his staff and tells her to stop making excuses and declares she is no longer a saint. The priest accuses her of being possessed by the devil and calls her the witch of mortal sins. She defends Arata and says he is a skilled and kind man sent by God. But the priest insists that someone who defeated a dragon in one punch cannot be human. He says the church already knows the truth that she sold her soul to a demon. The priest tells her to stop speaking nonsense and declares that this is the end of their lives and the sacred warriors surround the heroes. Ellie thinks Ceres has been very useful to the church and wonders if her light is too strong. Then the shadow it creates will grow deeper and darker. She thinks a light as powerful as Ceres is seen as nothing more than a hindrance in the factional struggles within the church, and judging by how quickly the rumor spread, it was clear this had all been plotted from the start. She thinks that from the moment they stepped into the cathedral, their fate had already been sealed, and there was nothing they could do. Ellie closes her eyes and prepares to use her strongest magic, despite her friends warning her that it will finish her. She says she's willing to do anything to protect them. Just then, Ceres prays to God to stop the fighting and raises her staff and lets out a powerful light. Ark and Ellie recognize that the light she used is the same as when she called for help from Arata. Suddenly, Will appears beside her and says she heard her wish. Ceres looks at her in shock, as Will says she hasn't felt the power of God in a long time. She admits she never imagined that she would leave the island, but it happened because Ceres formed a bond with Arata. Just then, a warrior asks Will who she is. Will turns to him and introduces herself, to which the warrior asks if she is the one who appears in a myth from over 10,000 years ago. Explains that the girl is an ancient vampire more than 10,000 years old. Will then releases dark energy and says that she is the queen of demons who once slayed gods. After that, she destroys the church and says she has fulfilled Ceres' wish and none of her loved ones are harmed. Ceres thanks her and asks why she helped them, to which Will says that she was just having fun. Then she explains that she sensed some of the remains of the magic of the gods and Arata's power. Hearing this, Ceres asks if Arata sent her and Will lies that he sent her. Will is excited to think that she can apply her cringe love lessons to them too. Then she waves at them and says the summoning spell is fading, so she will return home soon. Ceres replies that she didn't even get the chance to thank her, but Will says they are already connected, so if they want to meet Arata again, they will find their way to him. As she vanishes, she tells them that Arata is on the divine island of Arcadia. Ark turns to his friends and says they should leave since they can't stay in the ruined church any longer because they are now wanted for life. Ceres looks at the destroyed land with a heavy heart and says it really is time to go to the divine island of Arcadia. The warriors move forward through the rubble, beginning their journey to find Arata. Meanwhile, Arata is sitting at the table in his house and thinks that a lot has happened, but recently the days haven't been very eventful. He thinks that they managed to build a house and interact with divine beasts and live a comfortable life on the island, but now he wants even more comfort. Then he says to Lena that they should build a road to the divine beast's village because the last time he searched for Luna, the path felt too bad. Lena admits there isn't even a proper road to the village, and Arata adds that Merlin and Zelos didn't visit the divine beast village because they told Arata that the path is too difficult for them. He suggests they should build a better route to improve interaction and says the idea isn't bad, but the land originally belongs to the beast race and was only lent to them. She says the beasts might not be happy with the idea. Arata then shares his idea with Elga and says he doesn't mind and explains that divine beasts don't need roads, but ordinary beast people don't know when a monster might appear. Then he says monsters won't go near the road because of Arata's scent, and it will improve safety. Lena suggests they should consult Susako first, to which Elga replies that she probably wouldn't mind and isn't even in the village now. He tells them that she went to see Will and hasn't returned yet, and she seemed very upset. Hearing this, Arata asks if she is okay and Elga says even if the old hag dies, she will resurrect again, so there's no need to worry. Then he offers his help and suggests that he can bring the clan to help. Lena then asks Arata how he plans to build the road, and he explains that they first need to cut down trees and then level the ground using earth magic. However, Lena says that mana isn't infinite and the village is quite far away, but she gets shocked when Arata says he never runs out of mana. She then points to the forest and asks what he plans to do with the trees they cut. Arata says to Elga that the trees are in good condition and shouldn't go to waste, and Elgar replies that his people will find a use for them. After that, Arata raises his hand and cuts the trees using magic, and his partners carry the trees away. 3 days later, Arata imagines the road's length and says they've only completed 1/10 of the way to the village, and tells them that he used to run for half an hour to reach the beast village. Then he asks about Merlin and Zelens, and Lena tells him that they are very tired due to mana depletion. Hearing this, Arata suggests they can stop for now. Lena then says she wants to take a bath, and Arata offers to prepare it for her. After that, Arata looks up at the sky and thinks the sun is still high and that he enjoys days like this. But he can't do everything alone, and it's not fun without friends. He smiles as he imagines spending time with them and thinks about how much he enjoys the peaceful everyday life. He reflects that every day he wakes up free, works, and plays whenever he wants. He thinks he chose reincarnation on his own, so being a little selfish is normal.
After Arata and Riene decided to build a road to the village of divine beasts, the island's inhabitants have decided to help them out, due to which the process has been going smoothly. However, they are still not even halfway done yet, but at the same time, gathering stuff together and trying to make something out of it has been pretty fun for Arata. Since they have some time, Arata has decided to take it slow and is having a great time fishing on his own. Just then, he notices Kadama, completely drenched, lying on a tree trunk. After taking her out of the water, he receives gratitude from Kadama, and just as he is about to question the reason she was in the river again, Arata notices one of her jugs peeking at him. Flustered, he instantly looks away and gives her his jacket. Once she has put it on, Arata once again asks why she was drifting down the river again and gets told by Kadama that she actually needs him for something. Still curious, Arata mentions that her needing him for something doesn't have to do anything with her drifting down the river. Kadama then replies by saying that she realized the mountain she lives on is pretty far from his house. So she thought taking the river down would be the easiest and quickest way to get here. But on the way, she fell into the river and got a foot cramp, due to which she couldn't climb back to the shore. Nonetheless, Arata questions about the work he needs him to do and gets told by Kadama that an Ophir never forgets the kindness of others. Due to this, she has come to warmly invite him and the others to her village. After returning home, he informs Riene about what happened, to which she happily agrees since Riene is also curious about the way Ophir lives. However, she reminds him that they are in the middle of building the road, to which Arata agrees, saying that he doesn't want to put off doing that because that would feel like making a half-hearted effort. Suddenly, Kadama appears, telling him not to worry about that, and if he needs time to prepare, she will just let her village know when he's ready to visit. She further mentions that Ophir are patient people, which is why it'll be okay even if he doesn't visit them for the next 50 years or so. Concerned, Arata wonders what she is going to do while she waits, to which Kadama replies, telling him that since she doesn't have anything to do back home, she plans to live in the house for now. Arata lets out a sigh but ultimately agrees to let her live. A week later, Kadama is busy cutting down the trees with her excellent swordsmanship skills, which ends up catching both Arata and Riene by surprise. When they praise her abilities, she further boasts by saying that hunting an emperor boar is an easy task for her. Arata is also glad because they were able to make a lot of progress thanks to Kadama, and for now, he decides to collect the trees, asking Riene to clean up the road. Kadama wonders what she should do now and gets told to keep moving forward and continue cutting those trees. Moreover, he asks Riene to let him know if she gets tired, but she reassures Arata that she can handle this much, as it would be a disgrace to the 7 heavenly great mages if she were the first to throw in the towel. Nonetheless, he suggests keeping up with Kadama for now, to which she agrees, telling Arata that she might drop out midway to rest. A few hours later, both Kadama and Arata are frustrated because there is nothing to eat. Turns out Riene went overboard with the work today and exhausted her mana, due to which she is in bed. Having no other choice, the two of them go outside and discuss the fact that they still have some meat from the hunt left. But the one who makes food is not present, and since the only thing he has ever made is a fool of people, they only have 2 options, either grill the meat or boil it. When Kadama asks about the difference between the two, Arata refuses to elaborate and leaves it to her to decide. After thinking about it, Kadama eventually chooses to grill the meat, to which Arata agrees. With that, he starts taking out the meat when a thought enters his mind, and he asks Kadama if dragon meat is good. She agrees, informing Arata that dragons are powerful, so Ulfir, like her, rarely gets to eat dragons themselves. Seeing him talk about dragon meat makes her wonder if he has some, but Arata disagrees, telling her that he just remembered the dragon named Walpurgis and thought that its belly looked juicy and delicious. He then starts to regret not bringing it back with him, and afterward, Kadama points towards another dragon, wondering if she would be perfect. Turns out the dragon she's talking about is Tiltu, who's hiding behind the door, terrified of what she just heard. With tears in her eyes, Tiltu asks if Arata is going to devour her, asking if he has always seen her that way. With hearing a word he has to say, she dashes away, and seeing this, Kadama figures that this is what's called a pandemonium. Nevertheless, Arata starts running after her, trying to convince Tiltu that she got the wrong idea, but she disagrees, saying that she heard it with her own ears. He tries to make her believe that he wasn't the one pointing at her, and just as Arata is about to catch her, Tiltu transforms into a dragon and starts flying. She then mentions that he won't be able to catch her this way and flies away. Knowing that if he lets her go, Tiltu will probably cry by herself and remember how many people on the island have treated him nicely, which includes Tiltu as well. With that in mind, he puts all his energy into his legs and jumps with all his might, allowing him to catch up to Tiltu. Shocked, she questions how he is flying and gets told by Arata that he learned from watching Wilhelmina. Tiltu argues that this is not something people can learn easily, and before long, Arata starts to struggle because he is unable to keep his balance with magic. Still, he tries his best to follow Tiltu, and seeing this, she starts to slow down. Seeing this, Arata asks if she's worried about him and asks her to forgive him already. Tiltu mentions that she doesn't care about someone who wants to eat her, and judging by her tone, Arata figures that she's not upset anymore. But knowing that he can't catch up to her this way, he decides to use the magic Riene uses and makes a tornado in the opposite direction. This allows Arata to not only catch up with Tiltu, but also fly past her. Since he doesn't know how to stop, Arata just keeps going until he notices another dragon in his path, ready to take a bite out of him. Tiltu informs Arata that this dragon makes great steaks, asking him to never let it escape. After hearing that, Arata decides not to send it flying and instead uses air/magic to chop its head off. Simultaneously, Tiltu transforms back and questions why he went past her. Arata apologizes, saying that he's not good at controlling his power. She then asks if they are going to take the dragon back, and when Arata figures that she must not be comfortable eating another dragon, Tiltu proudly disagrees, telling Arata that they taste pretty good. Moreover, this makes her wonder if he believes that she and the dragons are the same. When Arata mentions that he thought dragons were also her kind, Tiltu disagrees, telling him that it's like comparing Luna to the Emperor Boars. This makes him realize that it's not cannibalism, and he is glad that he was able to make up with her. It's been a week since Kadama started living at their house, and the road to the village of divine beasts is finally completed. Riene compliments Arata for managing to complete this project in a month, but he lets her know that it's all thanks to the help from her and the divine beasts. Kadama also interrupts, saying that her contribution was pretty amazing, to which Arata agrees, saying that she can really do a lot of stuff if she locks in. Moreover, he mentions that interacting with the divine beasts will be easier now and hopes that their effort doesn't get ruined by other magical beasts. Kadama informs Arata by saying that she wouldn't worry about that since the road is charged with his mana, which is why most magical beasts will think that it's dangerous to go near it. This reminds Arata that Elga said the same thing, and since the whole island seems to know him already, he figures that it should be safe for Riene to travel alone as well. Now they only have one last thing left to do, and later that night, everyone, including the divine beasts, enjoys their time partying over the completion of the road. Before long, Suzaku appears and wraps her arm around Arata, thanking him for inviting her to the party. He discusses the fact that Suzaku was gone somewhere, saying that he didn't know she was back. Suzaku agrees, saying that the barrier around the island has weakened, so she went to talk to a certain suspicious vampire. But after talking to her, she found out that Wilhelmina wasn't responsible for it. But there was a brief moment where she completely erased her presence from the island. Concerned, Arata wonders if it's really okay and gets told by Suzaku that Wilhelmina won't probably go wild for now, so he shouldn't worry about it. Moreover, she seems to be hooked on messing around with Arata for now. With that being said, Suzaku leaves to enjoy the food with the rest of the divine beasts. After that, he walks up to Riane, saying that her food is as popular as ever. He then looks around and sees everyone having a good time, which makes him ask Riane if she thinks of this as an amazing sight. When Riane agrees, Arata mentions that while making the road to the village, he somehow closed the gap between their hearts, which is one of the reasons he wishes to be friends with tribes other than just the divine beasts. He further says that there are ancient dragons, demons, spirit elves, and many other tribes that they haven't met yet. When Riane argues by saying that they have no idea if they are friendly like the divine beasts, Arata says that they will never know until they meet them. Even Elga had his guard up against them at first, but after exchanging words and having meals together, the two of them became friends. This is why he is sure that they can get along with the other tribes as well. Nonetheless, after looking at the sight in front of him, Arata started to dream of not just them, but all the tribes on the island loving and getting along with one another. This is why he has now decided to hold a feast that is going to bring every tribe on the island together. After seeing the auralist pose of Arata, Riane starts laughing, saying that he looked so serious, but all that came out of his mouth was talk about a banquet. Still, Riane also agrees that it would be wonderful to see such a sight. Seeing the smile on her face, Arata gets a little flustered, and when Riane asks if something is wrong, he instantly dismisses it. Just then, Tiltu comes running to Arata, and when Riane comments on how she sounds pretty happy, Tiltu agrees, telling them that she is having so much fun right now. Arata mentions that he saw her wrestling with Gaius earlier, and Riane adds that everyone was cheering for her. Suddenly, she becomes silent, and when Arata asks if something is wrong, she replies by saying that while she's having fun, this is her first time eating together with so many people. Before this, she always used to be left out, even among the other ancient dragons. This reminds Arata of what Elga said about Tiltu being so powerful that she was excluded even by dragons her age. Furthermore, Arata wonders if everyone treating her kindly is painful for Tiltu, because it might remind her of the lonely loser she used to be. Soon after, Kadama also appears, asking why they all seem down and suggesting they all enjoy themselves, as it's not every day that they have a fun banquet. Just then, Arata realizes something and asks if Ulfir and the divine beasts are on bad terms with each other. When Kadama agrees, Arata discusses the fact that she was eating and drinking with them pretty normally. Annoyed, Kadama lets him know that since this is a banquet, she is bound to enjoy eating and drinking together even if they don't get along. Hearing this, all three of them are left surprised, and after seeing that look on their faces, Kadama mentions that it's better to have fun, which is why she believes that the problems between tribes don't really matter. Her words bring a smile to Arata's face, and he realizes that although Tiltu is an outcast right now among the ancient dragons, he just needs to bring them to a banquet like this, and if they drink, eat, and laugh together, he's sure they will realize that Tiltu being too strong for them was just a trivial matter. With that settled, he asks Tiltu to just eat and enjoy the banquet for now, suggesting that they invite the other ancient dragons next time. Tiltu agrees with this and mentions that it'll be okay since she's not alone anymore. Riane also lets her know that she is like their family and friends. Simultaneously, Zelos and Merlin appear and invite Arata to drink with them. Luna also comes running, saying that she wishes to join them as well. Seeing this shocks Tiltu, and after wiping off her tears, she agrees with a bright smile on her face. Once she leaves to hang out with the others, Arata thanks Kadama, who's completely clueless about the whole situation. Moreover, Arata calls her a genius, and Kadama completely agrees with him, not really caring about the reason he's saying that. The following day, Arata is on a walk with Merlin, discussing the fact that Tiltu and Marlin have gotten pretty close to each other. Merlin mentions that whenever he tries to join them, Marlin always drives her away, which is why he ended up inviting Arata out for a walk. As they continue walking through the forest, the two of them suddenly sense a force they have never felt before. Although Marlin knows that this island is already filled with nothing but insanely strong monsters, the power they are feeling is pretty wild, enough that Arata might get hurt as well. Having no other choice, they decide to check it out, and after reaching that spot, Arata hears some curse words getting thrown around. Furthermore, he notices the tribe of ancient dragons and demons going against each other in a full-fledged battle. Before long, the two tribes start going at it, punching each other and attacking with all their might. Shocked, Marlin mentions that this is no joke, to which Arata agrees, saying that this is causing too much of a disturbance in the neighborhood. Seeing that one side looks pretty familiar to Tiltu, he figures that they must be ancient dragons, while the other side is men with dark red skin. Considering that they are fighting with the ancient dragon, he realizes that they must be demons. Since this is his first time seeing them on the island, Arata comes to realize that they are way stronger than ordinary monsters, prompting Marlin to remind Arata that this is no time to be leisurely commenting. According to him, if those guys keep fighting, they will blow up the entire region. With that, one of the ancient dragons launches an attack directly towards one of the demons. However, once the dust clears, Arata notices that the demon is still alive and manages to hold up. Shocked, Marlin mentions that the strike was powerful enough to blow away a whole city and questions Arata about what they are supposed to do about this. Knowing that their fight has nothing to do with them, he decides to just spectate for now. Just then, he notices Tiltu flying in the air, but instead of fighting, she just wanders around. Confused, Marlin wonders if she's trying to get them to accept her. Moreover, they notice that while both sides seem to notice Tiltu's appearance, they are actively ignoring her on purpose. Arata agrees with him, and they continue watching Tiltu make efforts to make them recognize her. Seeing this, both Marlin and Arata start to cheer her on, saying that she won't be able to solve anything if she doesn't take a step forward. The two of them don't have any choice but to watch her make an effort since this is a problem she needs to solve on her own. Ultimately, Tiltu begins heading straight towards the battle, which catches Marlin and Arata by surprise, but they decide to watch for now. Furthermore, they started praising her for her efforts, and after getting close enough, she ended up attacking both tribes instead of having a normal conversation. Surprised by what she just did, Marlin mentioned that she just attacked her own tribe, and Arata adds by saying that she shouldn't have done that. Meanwhile, both tribes are furious at her, and the ancient dragon leader hits her with some pretty unholy words, asking Tiltu to stop messing around. While the demon leader also calls her a draw loner, telling her not to get cocky just because she is stronger than they are. Tiltu tries telling them that they got the wrong idea, but they couldn't care less, and instead of fighting each other, both tribes start charging her instead. Seeing that this is not going as planned, Tiltu continues attacking and absolutely destroying both tribes. Concerned, Marlin wonders if the reason Tiltu doesn't have any friends is because she is always like that, and gets told by Arata that she doesn't seem to be doing that on purpose. He believes that this is probably her way of trying to get accepted, but she's still pretty tactless. On the other hand, Tiltu is still confused about why things turned out the other way and keeps fighting them on her own. Arata is well aware that if the battle continues, both the tribes will be wiped out, and while he is not obligated to save the ancient dragons or the demons, he still has a goal to hold a feast that brings every tribe together. He doesn't see himself making that dream come true with how things are, and more than anything, he doesn't like seeing Tiltu in this rogue state. With that being said, he decides to finally step in, to which Marlin mentions that he is probably the only person in the world who can head towards that apocalyptic war zone and make it sound like he's going for a stroll. Ultimately, Arata comes between Tiltu and the tribe leaders she's fighting and asks them to stop. Confused, the tribe leaders question who he is while Tiltu transforms back to her human form and tries explaining to Arata that this isn't what it looks like. However, he pats her head, reassuring her that he is aware that she wasn't trying to bully the weak. Hearing his comment, the ancient dragon leader gets furious, asking who he is calling a walking. Moreover, he dashes towards Arata, figuring out that he knows Tiltu, and punches him right in the face. Afterward, he laughs at the fact that Arata couldn't even dodge the punch, only to realize that he is still unscathed. while Arata thinks about his attack being weaker than Gaius. Charge, the demon leader pushes the ancient dragon leader aside and tries kicking Arata, but once again, he remains unfazed. With that, he asks both the leaders if they are satisfied, and when Tiltu tries to intervene, he questions the reason she attacked them. Hesitant, Tiltu lets him know that she did it because they always leave her out, and she wants nothing more than to fight with them. After hearing what she has to say, and the stuff both the leaders said after she attacked them, Arata figures that something like this must happen all the time. Nonetheless, he decides to ask Tiltu later, and for now, questions if the leaders are calling it a day now. Enraged, the ancient dragon leader says that they don't need to hear anything from an outsider who has just appeared, to which the demon leader agrees, telling Arata that he has no right to interfere in the fight. Their comment ends up making Arata mad as well, who asks if they can't accept such a simple request. Worried, Tiltu runs up to the leader of ancient dragons, telling him to go home, but Arata is being nice, but he disagrees and ends up blaming Tiltu for the mess they are in. When Tiltu argues by saying that she is an ancient dragon like them, the demon disagrees, telling Tiltu that she is something else. Moreover, he says that if Arata intends to annihilate them, they must also put their lives on the line. Hearing their conversation helps Arata realize that while the dragons and demons are enemies who are on bad terms with each other, they still draw the line somewhere, and Tiltu's existence crosses that line. However, he still finds it to be a line drawn from a very narrow perspective. In the end, he calls both the tribe leaders lame, and when they start yelling at him for mocking them, Arata lets them know that they don't wish to fight anyone who's stronger than them, which he finds pretty lame. Additionally, he asks them if an even stronger opponent were to appear, would they let Tiltu join in as well? Arata then believes that Tiltu shouldn't have panicked and attacked both tribes at once. However, if that was the result of her desperate thinking, then he believes that it's up to the adults to acknowledge her efforts. This is exactly why he wishes to help Tiltu for trying her best, and for that, he lands an attack to showcase his power to the tribes. Seeing this, both the ancient dragon tribe leader and the demon tribe leader are shocked. Arata then questions if they should begin the fight, and knowing that he's pretty dangerous, the demon leader suggests that both tribes attack him at once. With that being said, they launch the first wave of attack at him together and start to think that he must already be defeated, only for Arata to kick away most of the demons at once. He then appears behind the leader of the demons, saying that he's probably the strongest among the demons, but to him, this battle is like a coughing baby against a hydrogen bomb. After landing a brutal blow on the leader of demons, Arata mentions that it's time for him to take care of the ancient dragons next. Hearing this, one of the dragons gets furious and yells at Arata, telling him not to think that they are on the same level as those lowly demons. Following that, several dragons attack him using their fire breath at the same time. But to their surprise, Arata is left completely unharmed by their attack and wonders if that was it. Moreover, he lets them know that just like the demons, it's now time for them to come crashing down to the ground. After he's done giving both tribes a good beating, they all lie in front of him, still refusing to accept defeat, although they are pretty messed up. Arata is impressed by their sheer will and thinks about how they are more skilled than the others, talented enough to become as strong as Elga one day. He then asks Tiltu if she knows their names, to which she agrees, informing Arata that the leader of ancient dragons is named Graham, while the leader of the demons is Jais. Furthermore, he asks her the reason they are both fighting and gets informed by Tiltu that both these tribes grew up being told by adults that they need to get stronger by fighting. This makes Arata understand that they probably started doing that to get stronger and now have started to hate each other. Graham, who heard this, confronts Tiltu for backstabbing them, to which she disagrees, telling Graham that they never accepted her in the first place. Annoyed, Graham tells her to shut up, saying that she already knows her ancestor, so this has nothing to do with her. Surprised to see the turn of events, Arata asks Tiltu about knowing her ancestor. She reminds him by saying that she is an ancient dragon whose ancestor is Bahamut, and mentions that Arata might not be aware of this because he often meets grown-ups. But those whose powers have not awakened are because they don't know who they're descendants of. This reminds Arata that Elga introduced himself with his ancestors, but Luna didn't because she doesn't know hers. Since both tribes value strength, it's important for them to keep fighting in order to get stronger and carry on the name of their ancestors. Graham adds by saying that it doesn't make any sense for Tiltu to get into their fights when she has already awakened and has the name of her ancestors. Jais also agrees, telling Arata that they are not fighting for fun. Arata stares at them quietly and argues that both the leaders seem to already know their ancestors. Judging by their reaction, Arata realizes that he just hit the spot because while fighting them, the two leaders were clearly on a different level than the others. Afterward, Arata mentions that while he doesn't know their reasoning, he questions if they are sure that lying so shamelessly is okay. When Tiltu tries asking about what's going on, Arata apologizes to her, telling her to wait while he tries to persuade the two of them for a bit. Once he has heard their story, Arata realizes that the leaders saw their friends leave Tiltu after she was awakened, and were scared that they might become bottom-tier loners as well, even though they wanted to keep fighting. This is why they decided to stay quiet about their awakening and fought with others while suppressing their powers. While Arata understands their situation, he mentions that if they continue telling one lie after another, they will ultimately lose sight of their true selves. Graham mentions that he already knows that, and Jais says that he is also aware that they can't keep lying like this forever. Just then, an idea pops up in Arata's head, and he suggests something they can do to fix this. A few days later, Graham introduces himself to his ancestors and attacks Arata, while Jais, who is in his true form, does the same. Shockingly, Tiltu is fighting alongside them as well, and all three of them attack Arata at the same time. However, while it did sting a little bit, Arata is still left completely unharmed. Following that, he retaliates by attacking the three of them at once, causing them to fall to the ground, complaining about Arata being a complete monster. He then prepares himself for round 2, but Graham asks for a timeout. Both the tribes then started to crack up a plan which they can use to defeat Arata, and seeing Tiltu take part in this brings a smile to Arata's face. Apparently, what happened that day was that Arata suggested the leader fight him and say that they had awakened in the process. Saying this wouldn't sound so unnatural, according to him, and fighting someone stronger than Tiltu, they won't have any reason to keep fighting without taking her help. Luckily, both leaders found this plan to be worth giving a shot and agreed with Arata. Back in the present, Arata realizes that he needs to make good use of the tough body he was granted by God. Before long, Riene and Luna appear, asking if he is done on his end. Arata informs them that the tribes are having a meeting right now, and Riene suggests having lunch together once they are finished. Later that day, Riene explains to everyone that the meat is already present and asks them to grill it themselves. Moreover, she asks them not to fight, saying that only those who can follow the rules get to have meat, to which both the demons and ancient dragons agree. With that being said, the party officially commences, and while Luna enjoys having a feast with Jais, Graham complains about running out of meat. Just then, Tiltu comes running and gives Arata the biggest hug she possibly can. She tells Arata that she is having so much fun right now, all because of him. And when Arata asks her to elaborate, she explains that no one calls her loner dragon or leaves her out anymore. She thanks Arata for making it all possible, but he disagrees, telling Tiltu that this all happened because she worked hard. Confused, Tiltu argues that she didn't do anything. Arata then asks her if she holds back her powers when she's with Riene and the others, to which she agrees, as weak ones will just throw up right away if she doesn't. This makes Arata explain that the reason she can get along with the others now is that she has learned how to take care of them. However, she still doesn't really understand what he means, which doesn't seem to bother Arata, as Tiltu has already grown enough to be able to seize her opportunities, which is exactly why everyone has started to accept her. Nonetheless, Tiltu mentions that Arata is the one who gave her this opportunity in the first place and gives him a hug along with a kiss on the cheek. With that, she runs away to eat her food, leaving Arata flustered, who can't believe that she broke his no-female interaction streak. While he is a bit embarrassed, he is glad at the same time that Tiltu is starting to feel better. This is exactly the sight he had wished for. No matter how much tribes don't get along, he is sure that they can make up with each other once they get to know each other better. Now his plan is to expand this circle even more and hold a feast that brings everyone on the island together. Following that, Arata looks up to the sky and asks God if he thinks Arata can make his dream come true. But after getting no response, Arata figures that God might not be able to hear him and gets called by Riane to help her cut the meat. Just as he starts walking towards her, Arata gets told by God that he will be looking forward to seeing him achieve his dream, which comes as a shock to him, and he gives his thanks to God. Elsewhere, a round table conference of the 7 heavenly great mages is taking place. One of them comments on how he can't believe that both Marlin and Zelos died, due to which their head count has gone down quite a lot. One of them informs the others that they got a request from the kingdom, and when she's questioned about the request, she reveals that the kingdom wants them to strike down the saint who made a pact with the demon, the wannabe hero from Temu, and the Witch of Ruin. Hearing this makes him wonder if the kingdom is underestimating their network. She further says that no matter how influential the church is on the continent, the kingdom could have still refused, but still, they are requesting the help of heavenly great mages, which means that the kingdom has chosen greed over God. Although the group of heavenly great mages doesn't like to get involved with the kingdom, they have some value in this mission as well. The old man asks if they should prioritize this and tells the other 2 mages, named Carla and Seti, to go after the hero's party. Carla finds this job to be quite interesting and asks Seti if he's interested in the hero's skill, to which he agrees. The old man also tells them to check their powers, and if they are on par with the 7 heavenly great mages, they should bring them to their side. Since they lost 3 members, the hero's party can make a good replacement. But at the same time, if they are not as strong as expected, then Seti and Carla are allowed to do whatever they want with them. With that, the 2 of them walk out of the room, leaving the girl and the old man behind. She asks the old man to continue with his work, as the times will change even more from here on out. Now, a few days have passed since the banquet between the demons and the dragons. Currently, Graham is present outside Arata, addressing him as a big bro and asking him to train with him. However, Jais also appears, reminding Graham that the demons made a reservation with Arata first. This results in a fight between the 2 of them to decide who gets to train with Arata today. Just then, Tiltu appears and tells both Jais and Graham to go home, as Arata will be going on a date with her. Graham argues by saying that Arata already has Riane. She replies by saying that while Riane is a hot babe who makes good food, she is just as good as her. Hearing this, Graham starts laughing and mentions that a midget like her is not even close to Riane. And Jais also adds by asking Tiltu to say that again, after looking at her disappointment of a body. This causes Tiltu to complain to Arata about them being mean, making both Jais and Graham complain for relying on Arata, asking if Tiltu has no pride as a warrior. Ultimately, Arata asks them to stop fighting and tells the 2 leaders that they shouldn't say things that would hurt to hear themselves. After they both accept their mistakes, Arata asks Tiltu to make up with them and pushes her towards Graham, forcing them to shake hands. Both Graham and Jais start to hesitate, and seeing their reaction, Arata asks if they don't want to get along with her. Having no other choice, both of them comply with his request, which puts an end to their fight. Following that, Jais informs Arata that he wishes to introduce his little sister to him and invites Arata to visit his village. This comes as a surprise to Arata, as he didn't know Jais had a sister, and their conversation gets interrupted by Graham, who accuses Jais of stealing a march on them. Jais mentions that the ancient dragons already have Tiltu, so it's only natural that they introduce someone to Arata as well. Ultimately, Graham ends up inviting Arata to his village as well, saying that he will make sure to gather all the ancient dragons to come and welcome him. Furious, Jais tells Graham not to copy him, but Graham argues by telling Jais that while he will only introduce Arata to his sister, he will make him meet everyone. Once again, Arata is forced to stop their fight and promises to visit their villages later, but for now, he has to spend the day with Tiltu as promised. Both the leaders apologize for their behavior, and with that being said, Arata holds Tiltu's hand and flies away to spend the rest of the day together. The following day, Arata and Riane are on their way to Katama's village. On their way, he questions what Ulfirs are like, and while it's a bit hard for her to explain, she starts off by saying that Ulfir worships the great spirits, and among Ulfirs, high Ulfirs like her are very strong because they receive blessings from the higher spirits. Hearing this makes Arata realize that they most likely got into a fight with divine beasts because they told them similar stuff. Riene then asks what high Ophir are, to which Katama replies by saying that they are Ophir like her. Riene figures that she must be talking about the bigwigs of Ophir, but Arata didn't understand a thing they said. She then explains it to Arata by saying that it's live elves where the royalty is called high elves. Ophir and elves have the same roots, and they just worship different spirits. This makes Arata wonder if Katama is royalty, and Katama further explains by saying that High Ophir grew up strong with the powers they received to protect other Ophir. That is how ordinary Ophir can also live on this island, so the High Ophir are more like warriors than royalty. Afterward, as they continue making their way up on the mountain, Arata comments on how Ophir lives in really high places and gets told by Katama that it's because they are mountain folk who revere the spirits of fire, earth, and darkness. As they continue making their way forward, Arata remembers that while he and Katama might be fine with all the hiking, Riene had quite a difficult time when they last did something like that. With that in mind, he asks Riene if she's all right and suggests carrying her in his arms if she's tired. But to his surprise, she easily jumps over a boulder, prompting Arata to ask how she is still fine even though they have been walking for a while. Riene lets him know that she has to make it through every day on an island like this, which is why she has become more fit and has gotten better at controlling her mana. Arata remembers that she also knows how to use body enhancements, to which Riene agrees. The two of them then get interrupted by Katama, who lets them know that they are almost there. After walking a little more, they eventually arrive in the village of Ophir. Arata is shocked to see the houses built around the cliff and is told by Katama that this is the village where she lives. Since the Ophirs worship the spirits, they feel more connected to them by becoming one with the mountain. With that, she suggests going to visit the elder and his family first, to which Arata agrees. Riene then asks Katama about where the elder house is and gets informed by her that it's at the top of the mountain. Seeing just how high it is, Riene tells Arata that she is an ordinary human who would die if she fell from there. Confused, Arata questions why she is saying that while looking at him, and gets told by Riene that someone like him would probably not die even if he fell from there. Just then, they notice a bunch of Ophir coming out of their houses to take a look. Katama informs them that since Ophirs are pretty gentle-natured, everyone is afraid to approach Arata and Riene, even though they are interested. Moreover, she boasts about being the brave one amongst them who can even visit his house on her own. Nonetheless, she decides to head up first and starts climbing the mountain to make her way to the top. In an instant, she manages to cover half of the distance, which comes as a surprise to him. A sudden gust of wind blesses Arata by giving him a perfect view of those two peaches, causing Riene to yell at him. Once she is on the top, Arata comments on how Katama is amazing for climbing such a tall mountain in one go, and figures that this is why they are called the mountain folk. He then asks Riene if she can climb it, but after getting no response from her, he ends up holding her in his arms. When she begins to hesitate, Arata mans up and tells Riene to put her arms around his neck. Having no other choice, she agrees and does as he asks. This causes her hunkers to press against Arata's body, and the scent of her hair ends up making him flustered. After holding eye contact with each other in such close proximity, Riene asks him not to be so quiet, as it's embarrassing for her that way. He agrees with her and suggests climbing the mountain already. Before long, they also arrive at the top of the mountain, surprised to see just how big the house of the elder is. Katama, who is already present up there, stares at the two of them and says that she is baffled. She further mentions that a man and a woman should show some modesty when it comes to naughty stuff, but neither Riene nor Arata is showing any of that. Realizing that he is still holding her in his arms, Arata instantly puts her down. Katama then advises Riene by saying that girls shouldn't let their guard down so easily, because her grandma told her that all men are wolves who will devour her as soon as she lets her guard down. While Riene agrees with her, Arata finds it a bit difficult to accept. Although he is a bit annoyed at her for calling all men wolves, he can't admit the fact that she's saying all that while showing more skin than a Love Island trailer. Katama asks the reason he's staring at her like that, telling him to say it since she knows how to listen to others' opinions and grow for them. Hearing that, he ends up telling Katama that she looks a bit lewd, too. This statement causes a moment of silence among them, and after looking at Riene, Katama reminds her that all men are wolves. Moreover, she believes that just by her, Arata got a hard-on. But to Katama's surprise, even Riene agrees with Arata and says that she does look a bit lewd. Shocked, Katama tries to argue with them by saying that she's not lewd, and Arata asks for Riene's help to make her understand. After a discussion between the girls that lasted around 30 minutes, Katama eventually understands that she is indeed lewd. However, Riene tells her that it's okay since there are different clothes for different environments, so it's not all her fault. Hearing that it's not all her fault, Katama starts to feel a bit better after that and gets reminded by Arata that they should hurry up and meet the elder. With that, the three of them enter the elder's house, and as soon as the two of them notice the elder, they feel the extraordinary amount of energy he's emitting. Arata starts to think about how that guy looks really intimidating just by sitting there, and figures that his power is on the same level as Elga and the divine beasts. But even after waiting for some time, they get no response from the elder. Katama calls him again, and after checking up on him, she realizes that he's asleep. Having no other choice, she ends up yelling in his ear, which causes the elder to wake up for a moment, only to go to sleep once again. Realizing that they won't go anywhere trying to wake him up, Katama asks the two of them to make themselves at home while he gets up. Following that, she informs them that she is the elder's granddaughter, which is why she is a pretty big deal at the village. Katama further informs them that he is just her foster parent, and the two of them are not blood-related. Curious, Riene asks her about her real parents and gets told by Katama that they became one with the soil while she was still a baby. Concerned, Arata asks if she doesn't feel lonely, and Katama disagrees. Arata is glad to hear that and completely understands her because, at first, he was lonely when he came to the island as well. But then he met Riene, the divine beasts, Tiltu, Vilhelmina, and the others. This is why he's sure that Katama must have a family like that as well. He then asks if the elder is dear to her, and Katama agrees, telling him that he has always been kind to her, but on the other hand, her grandma is a bit scary. When Riene inquires about Katama's grandma, she starts by telling her that she's really energetic, but stops midway when she hears someone screaming her name. Instantly, Katama gets up and decides to go for a walk when out of nowhere, her grandma appears and pins Katama down to the ground. Furthermore, she starts choking Katama while scolding her for wandering off on her own and taking forever to come back. Although Katama tries her best to make her grandma stop, she ultimately cracks back, forcing her to give up. After that, her grandma shifts her attention to Katama and Riene, saying that they must be the guests Katama was talking about. She then introduces herself as Saria, saying that she might not look like that, but is a bit older than they are. When Katama tries mocking Saria by calling her an old hag, Saria kicks her in the head, telling Arata that she seems a bit puzzled. Nonetheless, Arata questions her about the elder, who looks pretty old, and gets told by Saria that he has been living a pretty long life and has been alive for a millennium. This is why if the elder sleeps, he doesn't wake up easily, so they will have to talk to Saria instead. Afterward, she points at Riene, asking Arata if she's his girl. Trying his best to keep his cool, Arata tells her that she is like his family. Hearing that, Saria walks up to Katama and tells her to be his mate. Flustered, Katama asks what she is trying to say and gets told by Saria that Arata is one fine male, so she should do what she gotta do and get her some grandchildren already. Katama argues by saying that he already has Riene, but Saria replies that a proper lady must be determined to take a fine male for herself, even by force. Following that, Saria gets behind Riene and begins feeling those massive jugs, telling Katama that they got nothing on her. However, after touching them for a while, Saria begins enjoying it and continues to do so. Hearing Riene hit those high notes while enjoying the moment, a neuron activates in Arata's head, making him run as fast as he can before his little one wakes up. Once he is outside the house, Arata makes up his mind never to believe that Ulfirs are gentle people. Just then, he notices a few dragons flying in the sky and figures that they seem way weaker than Tiltu, but he can't say for sure without fighting them. While he's aware that Elga, Tiltu, and the divine beasts are strong, he also knows that Suzaku and Vilhelmina are stronger. But he hardly knows which monsters on the island can be even stronger because, to him, they all seem equally weak. However, he doesn't think that it's a good thing because while he understands that Riene is strong in human terms, he has no idea what level of monsters she can fight up to. He has a feeling that this could lead to something terrible one day and decides to do something about it. Just then, one of the dragons starts heading towards him, and Arata prepares to fight back. But to his surprise, the dragon passes above him and ends up grabbing an Ophir kid. Furthermore, Arata hears the girl's parents shouting her name, which makes him realize that he needs to save her at all costs. With that being said, he flies towards the dragons, and seeing that, they shift their attention towards Arata and prepare to launch an attack. Before long, they both shoot fire breath at him, but as expected, Arata remains completely unharmed and punches one of the dragons. Seeing this, the other two try to flee, but Arata flies after them, wanting to protect the kid. For that, he kicks the other dragon in the face, causing it to drop the Ophir girl, whom Arata manages to catch. After making sure that she's all right, he notices the dragon roaring at him. But all it takes is one glare for the dragon to lose all its courage and fly away like a wimp. The girl Arata saved is shocked, as she has never seen a grand wyvern flee like that before. And hearing that, Arata realizes that they were not dragons but wyverns. Nonetheless, he takes the girl back to her parents, who are overjoyed to see their daughter return safely. Arata is also glad about the fact that he was able to save her. Soon after, one of the Ophir asks Arata if he's one of Katama's guests, to which he agrees. They all then bow their heads, telling Arata that to Ophirs, friends are like family even if they are not blood-related, and thank him for saving their daughter. Arata lets them know that he only did what he was supposed to do, asking them to lift their heads. Moreover, Ophirs regrets watching him from afar and not even showing themselves when he first visited, just because he is an outsider. However, Arata totally understands them and says that it's hard to accept an outsider right off the bat, which is why he is not bothered at all. Additionally, he reassures them that the girl he came with feels the same way as well. Seeing the way Arata talks, the Ophirs are shocked as they thought someone Katama brought would be pretty rude, but Arata is a good guy. This makes Arata realize that it may be Katama's fault that these guys were hiding in the first place. Just then the girl he saved comes up to him, thanking Arata for saving her life. Arata pats her head, telling that girl that he's glad she's safe. Simultaneously, Katama appears with a troubled look on her face, informing him that the elder is awake. Judging by her expression, Arata wonders if there's some kind of trouble and instantly goes up to the elder's house, asking Riene if something happened. But to his surprise, he finds Riene standing there with a betrayed face. Arata remembers everything that was happening to her and gets told by Riene not to pry any further. Saria then invites them to sit next to the elder, but even after some time passes, the elder remains completely silent. Before long, he hears the sound of snoring coming from him, prompting him to inform Katama that the elder is still asleep. Having no other choice, she is forced to shout in the elder's ear, making him wake up in an instant. Once awake, he tells Katama that she gave him a scare, shouting like that, to which he replies by asking the reason he went asleep after just waking up. The elder informs her that the danger had passed, so there was no reason for him to stay awake. Curious, Arata asks about the danger he's talking about and gets told by Katama that he told her to bring him to the house because there was some sort of danger. Following that, he bows his head and shows his gratitude to Arata for saving his children, and when Arata asks if he's talking about the wyvern attack, he agrees. Puzzled, Katama asks what they are talking about, and after he explains everything, she understands the reason everyone was gathered around him. Saria adds by saying that she can't believe he drove away wyverns of all things, and Riene mentions that they saw a whole lot of wyverns circling above the village, asking if they are after Ophir. Saria disagrees, and Katama says that they haven't seen the Great Spirit lately. Normally, they come near the village to protect them from time to time, and the wyvern attack today probably had something to do with that. Curious, Arata asks if they don't usually attack like that, and gets told by Katama that they sometimes get ones that stray from the flock, but that's about it. The elder also says that they worship the great spirit of fire, earth, and darkness, which is why they watch over them, allowing the Ophirs to live a peaceful life. The wyverns should rarely come in a flock like today because they know that happens when they do. This makes Kadama worried that something might have happened to the great spirits. Seeing the look on her face, Arata figures that the spirits must be really important to the Ilfirs. With that, he makes up his mind and suggests paying the spirits a visit to see how they are doing, so it can give Kadama peace of mind. Kadama lets him know that it would be presumptuous of her to visit their dwelling, which makes Arata suggest that he go alone. But the elder asks him not to, since the place where great spirits live is quite dangerous. Saria agrees with the elder, saying that it's not easy to ask them favors, and she wouldn't be able to sleep if Arata somehow angers them and gets eliminated. This prompts Arata to stand up and tell the Ilfirs that they shouldn't worry about that. Furthermore, he showcases his powers to everyone present, confident in the fact that he's strong enough to survive an encounter with the spirits. After witnessing his powers, the elder gives him permission to go and check on the spirits for them. With that being said, Arata arrives at the place where the great spirit of Earth resides and gets asked by Kadama the reason she was forced to come along. Arata argues by saying that he needs someone to give him directions, but Kadama is scared that she might anger the spirits. Arata reassures her by saying that she'd be fine and mentions that the great Earth spirit isn't there right now. Since he's not there, Kadama suggests moving on to the next spirit who lives about halfway up the volcano. After making their way to that place, they find out that the fire spirit isn't present there as well. Nonetheless, they then pay a visit to where the spirit of darkness lives, which is a pretty deep cliff. Noticing Kadama shivering after seeing the depth, Arata mentions that they can just go down using levitation magic, but Kadama lets him know that using magic at the place where a spirit lives isn't very polite. Hearing that, Arata first tests the depth by throwing a rock and then makes up his mind to jump. Kadama is shocked that there is no hesitation in his words, to which Arata replies by saying that they wouldn't be able to know if the great sage is present if they don't do that. Moreover, she tells Arata that no matter how strong his body is, Arata is bound to die after falling from such a height. Having no other choice, he decides to go in by himself, and seeing this, Kadama realizes that she bears responsibility as an Ilfir and ultimately decides to go with him as well. Before wasting any time, he holds her in his arms and jumps down the cliff. The two of them continue falling down for some time, and when Kadama asks just how deep the cliff is, Arata figures that this must be some kind of magic. This reminds Kadama that this might be the binding spell that the spirit of darkness uses, calling the prison of darkness. Only one person was ever able to escape from this spell, and she had the power of darkness herself. Using that, she opened the exit by force. After learning that, Arata becomes confident that he might be able to do that as well and asks Kadama to hold on tight because he is going to go all out. As soon as he puts focus on his body, Arata notices a light around his body, which he believes is the color of his mana. Furthermore, Arata thinks about how he always held back subconsciously against living beings, but now he is prepared to bring out his full potential. With that in mind, he uses his maximum power and throws a punch at the darkness. To their shock, the prison of darkness gets blown away by his punch, and the two of them find themselves standing at the bottom of the cliff. This makes Kadama realize that while they thought they were trapped in darkness, the two of them were on the ground this whole time. After Arata reassures her that everything is fine, Kadama gets down from his arms while Arata mentions that he had no idea that the bottom of the cliff looked like that. Kadama, still a bit freaked out, asks if it's really the dwelling of the great spirit of darkness, to which he agrees. Moreover, Arata asks if she's okay, to which Kadama replies by saying that she's not okay in many ways, but can at least stand up on her own 2 feet. She then mentions that they have just arrived at the dwelling of the great sage of darkness, who is said to be the most terrifying when angered. Apparently, the spirit of fire and earth generally interact with the Ilfirs, but she has never seen the spirit of darkness before, which is why she doesn't know much about her. On the other end, Arata is sure that the spirit won't be angry at them since they just came to check up on her out of concern. Nonetheless, he makes up his mind to be careful and not upset her, which Kadama finds hard to believe. While she doesn't really expect anything from a dimwit like him, having that ambition is important. Arata then asks about what they should be doing now and gets told by Kadama that they don't have a choice but to move forward. With that, she begins walking, and when Arata questions if it's the right way, Kadama lets him know that she can feel the power of a spirit coming from there. After focusing there himself, Arata begins feeling something strange and different from the magic coming from that side as well. Not only that, but he believes that this is the strongest force he's felt on the island so far, which makes him confident that it's the Great Spirit. Before they go any deeper, Kadama once again warns him not to disrespect the spirit in any way, to which he agrees, only to realize that he just blew away the prison of darkness. Kadama freaks out after remembering that and gets reassured by Arata, who says that it was their only choice, so he is sure it'll be all good. After walking for a while, they arrive at a sanctuary-like place where they find someone standing in front of the entrance. Once they take a better look, Kadama realizes that it's the goth mommy, or in other words, the spirit of darkness called Cheryl. Judging by the look on her face, she figures that the saint is most likely mad. Soon after, a bunch of spears surround them from all directions, causing Kadama to lose her mind, and she begins blaming it all on Arata. When he argues by saying that Kadama is being a bit too harsh, he gets told by her to apologize to the spirit already. After quietly watching them bicker with each other, Cheryl intervenes by asking Arata the reason he broke the barrier and came all this way. Shocked, Arata realizes that she is sending her words directly to his brain. Moreover, Cheryl adds by saying that if he is looking to pick a fight, she will accept. But since she is a bit busy dealing with some fools, she is going to make it quick. With that being said, all the spears start coming towards Arata, but judging by their trajectory, he realizes that none of them will hit him. Seeing him not move from his spot, Cheryl realizes that he saw that, to which Arata agrees. Afterward, she shoots another spear, but this time towards Kadama. Arata panics after seeing it and manages to spot the spear just in time. He then tells Cheryl that if he hadn't stopped this one, it would have definitely hit Kadama. Cheryl agrees, adding that it's all right since he stopped it. However, Arata disagrees, causing her to shoot more of those spears. He continues to break them in order to protect himself and Kadama when one of the spears ends up hitting the ground. To Arata's surprise, the ground begins eroding to black, which starts giving him a feeling of creepiness. Before this gets any worse, Arata tells Cheryl that they are not here to fight her and asks her to listen to them. While saying that, he stomps his foot on the ground, breaking all the spears at once. Shocked by his insane amount of power, Cheryl eventually agrees. Although she recognizes Kadama as Ulfir, Cheryl questions who he is. Arata is shocked by the fact that she is going to hear her out when, out of nowhere, he appears right in front of her. Cheryl mentions that she thought continuing the fight would be a waste of time and asks him to tell her what he wants. Confused, Arata wonders if he just moved in front of her in an instant and remembers Riene telling him that it's called teleportation, which is the realm of the gods. To think that Cheryl did that so easily means she really is one of the strongest on the island. Eventually, Kadama speaks up and introduces herself to Cheryl. Furthermore, she informs her that the great spirits have always watched over them, but they haven't seen any of them lately, which has made the wyverns go after them. This is why they were wondering if the great spirits were in some sort of trouble and decided to check up on them. Cheryl is shocked to hear that, and after understanding the reason they came to her, she decides to overlook Arata blowing away her prison of darkness. Moreover, she informs them that the fire and earth spirits are present here with her as well, but she has no clue what has gotten into them. Curious, Arata asks if there is some kind of trouble, and Cheryl decides to just show them, as it'll be faster than her explaining. With that, she takes them into the sanctuary, which is full of things that one finds in a fantasy novel, including gargoyle statues and whatnot. Cheryl notices Arata intensely staring at the things around him and asks if he finds it unusual. However, he replies by telling her that there isn't a man in the world who wouldn't get a kick out of this place. This statement ends up annoying Cheryl, and she tells him to go die instead. Nonetheless, she then questions the reason great spirits of fire and earth are present here, as they seem to have their own place to stay. Cheryl mentions that it's a pretty pathetic reason and takes the two of them to a coliseum. Apparently, this is the place where she passes the time by making the monsters she captured fight each other. Additionally, both the great spirits of earth and fire are present inside the prison of darkness, since she can't just let them fight out in the open. This makes Arata understand the reason he was sensing such a strong force coming from that black sphere. He then asks the reason the two of them are fighting, but instead of replying to him, Cheryl lets out a smirk and decides to put him inside the sphere so he can try and persuade the two of them. With that being said, he is teleported above the sphere in an instant and falls directly into it. Once he is inside the prison of darkness, he figures out the direction where the two of them are fighting and decides to go check it out first. Before long, he is able to see both the spirits going at it, and even though they notice Arata, they both ignore him like you ignore a thick baddie's red flags. Nonetheless, he lets them know that he has no intention of fighting when suddenly, he notices an attack heading his way. Instantly, he realizes that it's as powerful as Tiltu's beam of destruction. Knowing that he can handle this much, Arata jumps and punches the attack out of existence. Both the great spirit of fire and earth are caught by surprise, which is somewhat of a new reaction for Arata, since people around him normally dismiss his achievements as something he is capable of doing. The spirits then shift their attention to Arata, but he stops them in their tracks, reassuring them that he doesn't mean any harm, asking them to calm down. He then introduces himself as Arata, an ordinary person who was thrown in prison by Cheryl. After hearing the whole story, the spirit of fire Gwen finally understands that he came here in order to stop them, and the spirit of earth Zerth adds, by wondering what in the world was Cheryl thinking letting a human in here. But again, they are unsure if they can even consider Arata a human. When he makes them believe that he really is a human, Gwen argues by saying that a human can't survive any of his attacks. Nonetheless, Zerth asks if he knows the reason they are here, to which Arata replies by saying that he was ordered to persuade them, but he isn't aware of the situation or anything else. Moreover, Arata lets them know that he won't back down since Cheryl ordered him, and asks them to tell him the reason they are fighting. Having no other choice, they agree, and Zerth decides to tell him the reason. Arata remembers that Cheryl said it was a pathetic reason, but judging by the situation, it doesn't seem that way to him. With that being said, Zerth explains that whichever one of them wins this fight gets to be the grandfather of the next great spirit that's born. Zerth further says that he wishes to be called Gramps, and after hearing that, Arata stays silent for a while and then decides to head out. He believes that he shouldn't interfere since the two of them are so serious about it, but he also feels like he has to stay in order to persuade them. Just then, Arata finds himself in a different place with a little girl standing in front of him. They both look at each other for some time, and after thinking hard about it, she ends up calling him Papa. Arata is shocked to hear her say something like that, but the girl continues, making Arata realize how the other two great spirits might react if they heard that. For now, he decides to get that out of his mind and asks the girl to tell him her name. She replies by saying that she doesn't have one, and when Arata questions the reason she is calling him Papa, the girl thinks about it and says that it's because he is her Papa. When Arata tries letting her know that he is not her father, tears start forming in her eyes, forcing Arata to take back whatever he was saying. Hearing that, the girl brightens up and gives him a hug, calling Arata Papa. Arata realizes that the girl feels a bit cool to the touch and notices something on the ground. After picking it up, he realizes that it's an ice ball and wonders how it got here. At the same time, the girl falls asleep while hugging him, and he ends up picking her up. With that out of the way, Arata starts to feel chills in his spine and witnesses both the spirits present behind him, ready to put an end to him. Zerth regrets letting his guard down as he thinks Arata was after the position all along, and even though Arata tries explaining that it's a misunderstanding, they both refuse to listen and start to release their maximum amount of power. Arata notices that their mana is getting stronger and reaches the point where he can confidently call it the most intense surge of mana he has felt. But before talking it out with Arata, both the spirits mention that they must do something important first and start to argue about who's going to become the grandfather. Once again, their fight begins, and judging by their conversation, Arata figures that this girl must be the new great spirit. Before long, she starts getting annoyed by the disturbance they are causing, and after freezing the two of them, sends them away. With that, she falls asleep once again while Arata starts to wonder what he should do. Although he can escape the prison by force, Arata is aware that Cheryl will be mad at him. Nonetheless, he watches the little girl sleeping peacefully in his arms and decides to take his time since he is not in a rush or anything. A few minutes later, Gwen and Zerth return, and Arata asks them to explain the situation as he doesn't really understand anything. Gwen starts by telling Arata that it all started when there were signs of a new spirit being born. On this island, there are currently 6 spirits, but there are many more in the world. Furthermore, it's natural for them to be born and disappear, and as it had been 1,000 years since the birth of the previous spirit, a new one was born. That's the girl in Arata's arms. Considering the way she blew the 2 of them, they figure that it's the great spirit of ice. But since newborn spirits are similar to babies, an existing spirit has the duty to take care of them. Usually, the strongest spirit at the birthplace is chosen to take that role. Hearing this makes Arata realize that he was chosen by the great spirit of ice because he was stronger than the 2 of them. Moreover, before she was born, Gwen and Zerth were trying to decide who would become her grandfather, and for someone like him to appear out of nowhere and take everything away, he can understand why they are frustrated. Afterward, Gwen asks who he is, and when Arata mentions that he's a human, they refuse to believe him. Having no other choice, Arata explains his meeting with God, who gave him these powers, and after hearing this, they instantly start to believe in him. Nonetheless, they can return to the original topic, which is their wanting to become her grandfather. To solve this problem, Arata decides to tell her to call Gwen grandfather and Zerth Gramps once she wakes up. Both of them are overjoyed after hearing this and mention how this makes Arata their son. Now, the only problem that remains is the little girl, but he is sure they will find a way to take care of her. Following that, Arata wonders how they are supposed to leave this place, and he gets told by Zerth that even the 2 of them don't know anything about it. Ultimately, Arata decides to break the prison by force, only to be told by Cheryl that if he does it again, he's dead meat. With that, she opens the prison of darkness herself, letting the 4 of them free. Zerth mentions that he thought she'd keep them locked up for a few more years, and for now, they get asked by Cheryl to follow them. She takes them to the dining hall to serve them some food, where Arata notices some tiny dark spirits working for her. Kadama, who is sitting next to him, questions the reason he is always causing trouble, to which Arata replies by saying that he has never once thought about causing trouble, and that he was trying to solve this in his own way. Kadama lets out a sigh, reminding Arata that Riene is the one in charge of him, telling him to have fun with the scolding he is about to receive. This makes Arata wonder how he is supposed to explain it to Riene, and Kadama instantly refuses to help him out. Just then, one of the spirits arrives near him and transforms into a baby cradle. Cheryl tells him to let her sleep in it for now, and then suggests having a proper conversation, scaring everyone present in the room. Arata is then told that the 3 spirits sensed the birth of a new spirit and gathered to discuss what they should do. Both Gwen and Zerth tried fighting over who got to be her grandfather, which resulted in Cheryl putting them in the prison of darkness. Nevertheless, Arata asks Cheryl about what he should do and gets told by her to take responsibility for the spirit and protect her. She believes that if the spirit of ice is separated from him, she might cry and behave violently, so it's the best choice they have. Arata starts feeling bad about separating himself from her and asks for Cheryl's permission to discuss it with someone before taking this major step. Cheryl agrees, but tells him to take the spirit with him. Later that day, he returns to the village of Ulfir with the spirit girl on his back. Before long, she wakes up and finds the sight of the village quite fascinating. Kadama then suggests visiting the elder's place first, to which he agrees. There, the 3 of them are greeted by Riene, who first welcomes the 2 of them back and then notices the girl in his arms. With a terrifying voice, Riene informs Arata that she has a question, causing Arata to panic and try to explain himself, only to be told by Riene that she hasn't even said anything. While this island has a lot of powerful residents, the most powerful one for Arata seems to be Riene. However, before Arata even gets the chance to explain himself, the spirit of ice smiles at Riene and calls her mama, catching both of them by surprise. Is there anyone on the island who's stronger than Arata? Comment island if you'd like another part of this series. As usual, thank you for tuning in and we'll catch you in the next one.